Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Blood Ties. Russell Boyd knew death like an old friend. 15 years in Special Forces had taught him to recognize its approach, the stillness before chaos, the weight of watching eyes. He'd felt that same heaviness in the air when he returned home after his fourth deployment. His wife Adrienne's embrace felt rehearsed when he walked through the door of their modest Virginia home. Their son Travis, now 14, hung back in the hallway, something guarded in his eyes that hadn't been there in the video calls. "Welcome home, soldier," Adrienne said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Russell noticed the unfamiliar earrings, the subtle change in her perfume. "Good to be back," he lied, setting down his duffel. Something was wrong in his house. He could feel it in his bones. That night, Russell unpacked while Adrienne made dinner. As he stored his gear in the closet, he discovered a man's watch tucked beneath her sweaters. Not his, not something he'd ever seen before. He pocketed it without a word, his mind already calculating, assessing. The dinner conversation was strained. Adrienne talked about her new job at the real estate office, about Travis's school, about the neighbors. Russell nodded, but he was watching Travis, who barely touched his food. "Everything okay, son?" Russell asked. Travis looked up, then quickly away. "Yeah, fine. Just homework stress." Russell didn't push. He'd learned patience in Afghanistan. Information came to those who waited. Later that week, Russell followed Adrienne to what she claimed was a meeting with clients. Instead, she drove to an upscale restaurant across town. Through the window, Russell watched her embrace a tall man with a military bearing. The man wore an expensive suit, but Russell recognized the posture, the situational awareness. This was someone who had served. A quick license plate check through an old Army contact revealed the man was Liam Reynolds, former Marine Corps, now working for a private security firm with government contracts. The same firm that provided security for the military base where Russell was stationed. The pieces started falling into place, but Russell needed more information. He needed to understand the full scope of what he was facing before he made his move. He installed small cameras in the house, set up monitoring software on the family devices. Within days, he had his confirmation, text messages, calls, photos. Adrienne and Reynolds had been seeing each other for over a year. But there was something else concerning him. References to Russell's unit, to his deployment schedule, to mission details that should have been classified. Then came mentions of a big score and retirement plan. Reynolds was pumping Adrienne for information, using her to get to something valuable. Russell's last deployment had involved securing a shipment of specialized military hardware. The convoy routes, the security protocols, all information that Reynolds seemed desperately interested in. Russell watched his son growing more withdrawn each day. The boy knew something, but fear kept him silent. "Travis," Russell said one evening, finding his son alone in the backyard. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all." Travis looked at his father, his eyes haunted. "I can't, Dad. I just can't." Russell nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "When you're ready, then." That night, Russell heard Travis crying in his room. He stood outside the door, listening, his hand on the knob. Then he heard Travis whisper into his phone, "I can't keep doing this, Liam. He's my dad." Russell's blood ran cold. Reynolds had gotten to his son, too. Chapter 2, Shadows of Betrayal. Russell began mapping the connections between Reynolds and his wife, discovering a network that extended beyond just an affair. Reynolds had 3 brothers, all former military, all now working for various security contractors. Phone records showed regular contact between Adrienne and 2 of the brothers, Derek and Cole Reynolds. When Russell mentioned running into an old friend who now worked private security, Adrienne's reaction was revealing. A moment of panic quickly masked, followed by probing questions about what the friend had said. "Just catching up," Russell told her, watching her shoulders relax. "Might look into that line of work myself when my contract's up next year." "Really?" Adrienne said, her voice too casual. "I thought you were career military." "Time to think about the future," Russell replied, studying her face. "Make some real money for a change." That night, he found her on the phone in the bathroom, whispering urgently. "He knows something," she was saying. "No, I don't think he knows about us. But he mentioned private security. We need to move faster." Russell began backtracking through his last deployment records. His unit had been tasked with escorting an unmarked shipment from a research facility to a secure location. The official manifest listed electronic equipment, but Russell had been in the service long enough to recognize when he was moving something that didn't officially exist. Whatever it was valuable enough for Reynolds to orchestrate an elaborate scheme to get to it. Valuable enough to turn Russell's wife against him, to manipulate his son. Russell discovered that Reynolds had been dishonorably discharged from the Marines 5 years earlier for selling classified information. His brothers had all left their respective branches under similar clouds. Now, they operated in the shadowy world between legitimate security work and outright mercenary activities. What troubled Russell most was Travis's involvement. The boy was withdrawn, constantly checking his phone, jumping when Russell entered a room. One afternoon, Russell came home early to find Travis hurriedly closing his laptop. "School project?" Russell asked. "Yeah," Travis mumbled, not meeting his eyes. That night, Russell accessed Travis's laptop remotely. What he found chilled him. Reynolds had been messaging Travis for months, at first posing as a friend, then as a mentor, gradually extracting information about Russell's schedule, his habits, his deployment details. Recently, the messages had taken a darker turn, with thinly veiled threats toward Travis and Russell if the boy didn't cooperate. Russell's jaw clenched as he read the latest exchange. "Reynolds, your mom and I need that info about your dad's next convoy route. It's important." "Travis, I told you, he doesn't talk about work with me." "Reynolds, ask him. Make up a school project. Say you're proud of him. Whatever works. We need to know." "Travis, what are you going to do?" "Reynolds, nothing bad if everything goes according to plan. But if it doesn't, remember what I told you about what happens to families of soldiers who get in our way." Russell closed the laptop, his decision made. Reynolds and his brothers were planning something during his next convoy duty, likely an ambush to steal whatever they were transporting. They were using Travis as their informant, threatening him to ensure his cooperation. The next morning, Russell made a call to his commanding officer, requesting a meeting off base. Major Harvey Wilson had known Russell for 12 years, through 3 combat tours. "What's on your mind, Boyd?" he asked as they sat in a diner 20 miles from a base. "Need to talk about the next transport duty," Russell said quietly. "I think there may be a security breach." Wilson's expression hardened. "What kind of breach?" "Personal," Russell replied. "My wife's been seeing someone. Ex-Marine named Liam Reynolds." Wilson's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Reynolds? You're sure?" Russell nodded. "He's been asking questions about my deployment schedules, convoy routes. Getting to my son, too." Wilson set his cup down carefully. "Reynolds and his brothers have been on our radar. They're suspected of hitting military shipments in 3 states, but we've never been able to prove it. If he's targeting your convoy." He paused. "What exactly does he know?" "That's what I need to find out," Russell said. "And then I need your help to set a trap." Chapter 3. The Warning. The plan was simple but risky. Russell would feed Travis carefully selected information about an upcoming convoy, information that would seem valuable to Reynolds, but would actually lead him and his brothers into a military police ambush. Russell hated using his son this way, but he needed to know how deep Travis was involved, whether the boy was a willing participant or a victim of manipulation and threats. He casually mentioned the convoy to Travis over breakfast. "Big day, next Friday. Escorting some fancy new tech to Fort Benning." Travis's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. "What kind of tech?" "Can't say much," Russell said, watching his son closely. "But it's important enough that I'll be running point. Route 29 most of the way. Standard stuff." Travis nodded, his eyes darting to his phone beside his plate. That night, Russell monitored Travis's messages to Reynolds. "Travis, Dad's leading a convoy next Friday. Route 29 to Fort Benning. He says it's fancy new tech." "Reynolds, good work. Any details on timing or security arrangements?" "Travis, he didn't say, but he's running point whatever that means." "Reynolds, it means he's in the lead vehicle." "Perfect. Your mom and I appreciate this, Travis. Once this is done, we'll be set. You, me, and your mom can start over somewhere new." Reynolds' response confirmed what Russell suspected. They were planning to hit the convoy, and Adrian was fully complicit. They were even planning to take Travis away afterward. The following day, Russell met with Major Wilson and a small team of trusted officers to finalize their plan. They would set up a decoy convoy while the real shipment took an alternate route. Reynolds and his brothers would find themselves walking into a trap. But that night, everything changed. Russell was in his home office when Travis appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. "Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something." Russell gestured for him to come in, closing the door behind him. "What is it, son?" Travis broke down, tears streaming down his face. "I've been talking to Mom's friend, Liam. He made me tell him things about you, about your work." "I know," Russell said quietly. Travis looked up, shocked. "You know, I've known for a while. I want to see how far it would go, what they were planning." "They're going to hurt you, Dad," Travis said, his voice cracking. "Liam and his brothers. They want whatever you're transporting next week. They made me help them." Russell pulled his son into an embrace. "It's okay. I got a plan. The convoy information I mentioned was fake. We're setting a trap for them." Travis stiffened in his arms. "No, Dad, you don't understand. They know you suspect something. Mom told Liam you've been asking questions. They're changing their plan. They're coming here tonight. They're going to make me call you while you're on patrol, tell you something happened at home, so you'll come back alone." Russell's mind raced. If Reynolds knew about the trap, then the whole operation was compromised. Worse, they were bringing the fight to his home, where Travis was. "When?" Russell demanded. "Tonight. Mom left an hour ago to meet Liam. His brothers are supposed to come here at midnight. I'm supposed to call you at 12:30 after your patrol starts." Russell checked his watch. 11:15 p.m. He had 45 minutes. "Listen to me carefully," Russell said, gripping Travis by the shoulders. "This is what we're going to do." By midnight, Russell had contacted Major Wilson, explaining the change in situation. Then he positioned himself in the shadows of the living room, his service weapon ready. He had sent Travis to hide in the basement panic room he'd installed years ago, with strict instructions not to come out until Russell came for him. At 12:10 a.m., Russell's phone vibrated with a text from his security system. 3 men approaching the back door. Through the camera feed on his phone, he recognized Derek and Cole Reynolds, along with a third man he didn't know. They moved with military precision, checking sight lines, communicating with hand signals. They thought they were dealing with an empty house, expecting Travis to be the only one home. At 12:30, Russell's phone rang. It was Travis. "Go ahead, son," Russell said quietly. "Say the lines like we practiced." Travis's voice shook convincingly. "Dad, Mom's boyfriend says he knows your convoy route. His brothers are waiting to ambush you. They made me call to lure you." "I'm already home, son," Russell whispered, watching the 3 men enter through the back door, weapons drawn. There was silence on the line as Travis processed what this meant. The intruders never saw Russell. 15 years of special operations had taught him patience, precision, and the ability to move like a ghost. The first man went down silently, a precise strike rendering him unconscious. The second turned just in time to see Russell before a well-placed blow incapacitated him. The third, Cole Reynolds, managed to raise his weapon, but Russell was faster, disarming him with a brutal efficiency that left Cole's arm broken in 2 places. Within minutes, all 3 were zip-tied and unconscious on the living room floor. Russell called Major Wilson. "Situation contained," he reported. 3 suspects in custody at my residence. No casualties." He paused. "But Reynolds and my wife are still out there, and they know something's wrong when their team doesn't report in." "Stay put," Wilson ordered. "We've got patrols looking for Reynolds now. We'll find him." After ending the call, Russell went to the basement to get Travis. The boy was huddled in the panic room, shaking. "It's over," Russell assured him. "You're safe." "What about Mom?" Travis asked, his voice small. Russell's expression hardened. "Your mother made her choice." As they climbed the stairs back to the main floor, Travis stopped suddenly. "Dad, there's something else I need to tell you." Before he could continue, Russell's phone rang. It was Major Wilson. Boyd, we got a problem. Reynolds escaped our patrol. He's in the wind. And we can't locate your wife, either. Russell looked at Travis, whose face had gone pale. What is it, son? He asked, his voice gentle despite the urgency of the situation. Mom and Liam, Travis said. They have a place. A cabin in the mountains. She took me there once, made me promise not to tell you. Said it was her special place where she could think. Russell nodded, his jaw tight. Can you remember how to get there? As Travis described the location, Russell knew the real battle was just beginning. Reynolds would be desperate now. His brothers captured, his plan in ruins. A desperate man was unpredictable, dangerous. We need to go, Russell said, helping Travis to his feet. Right now. Chapter 4. Hunting Grounds. The mountain roads were treacherous in the pre-dawn darkness. Russell drove with methodical precision, his mind calculating contingencies. Beside him, Travis directed their route toward the secluded cabin where Adrian and Reynolds had created their secret retreat. How long have you known about this place? Russell asked, his voice carefully neutral. Travis stared out the window at the passing trees. Mom started taking me there about 6 months ago. At first, she said it was just for hiking trips. Then Liam started showing up. He paused. I didn't want to go anymore after that, but she insisted. So we needed to bond with him. Russell's hands tightened on the steering wheel. And what did Liam talk to you about during these trips? At first, normal stuff. Sports, school. Then he started asking about you. When you'd call from deployment, what you would talk about. He made it seem like he just wanted to know what kind of father you were. Travis's voice cracked. I didn't realize what he was doing until he started threatening me. Threatening how? He showed me pictures of guys he said crossed him. Said one word from him, and the same could happen to you. Or to me. Travis looked down at his hands. That's when I started telling him things. I'm sorry, Dad. This isn't on you, Russell said firmly. Reynolds is a predator. He targeted you because of me. None of this is your fault. As they approached the turnoff of the cabin, Russell killed the headlights and pulled over. Stay in the car, he instructed, checking his weapon. Lock the doors. If anyone but me approaches, use this. He handed Travis a small canister. Pepper spray. Aim for the eyes, then run into the woods. Head downhill, find a road. What are you going to do? Travis asked, fear evident in his voice. Russell's expression was unreadable. Reconnaissance first. I need to know what we're dealing with. The cabin sat in a small clearing, a rustic 2-story structure with a wraparound porch. A black SUV was parked outside, Reynolds' vehicle. Russell circled the perimeter, moving silently through the underbrush. Through a window, he could see Adrian pacing in the main room, her face etched with worry. Reynolds was nowhere in sight. Russell positioned himself near the back door, listening. Voices drifted through an open window. They should have called by now, Adrian was saying, her voice tight with panic. Something went wrong. Reynolds' voice, controlled but tense. Travis was supposed to make the call at 12:30. What if Russell figured it out? What if he hurt Travis? Reynolds' laugh was cold. Your husband's a soldier, not a monster. He wouldn't hurt his own kid, even if he knew the boy was setting him up. You don't know Russell, Adrian said quietly. Not really. I know enough, Reynolds replied. I know he's predictable, follows orders, plays by the rules. That's why this was supposed to work. So what now? Adrian asked. Now we adapt. My brothers will handle themselves if they got caught. They know the drill. Say nothing. Ask for a lawyer. By the time the military sorts through the red tape, we'll be long gone. And the money? The buyers are expecting delivery next week. We'll have to tell them there's been a delay. Once things cool down, we can still make this work. The intel you provided about the classified tech is too valuable to pass up. Russell had heard enough. Adrian wasn't just having an affair. She was actively selling military secrets to Reynolds, who was apparently planning to sell them to foreign buyers. This wasn't just about a convoy ambush anymore. It was treason. He was preparing to move when he felt, rather than heard, someone approach from behind. He turned just as a heavy blow struck the side of his head, sending him sprawling. Cole Reynolds stood over him, blood caking the side of his face, but very much not in custody. Looking for someone, Boyd? Russell's vision swam as he tried to reach for his weapon, but a kick sent it skittering away into the underbrush. Zip ties aren't much of a challenge for guys with our training, Cole said, hauling Russell to his feet. Though I gotta admit, you got the drop on us at your house. Wasn't expecting you to be home. He marched Russell toward the cabin at gunpoint. Liam, look what I found prowling around outside. The cabin door burst open, and Liam Reynolds emerged, his expression shifting from surprise to cold calculation at the sight of Russell. Boyd, I should have known you'd track us here. He glanced past Russell toward the dark woods. Where's the boy? Safe, Russell replied, his voice steady despite the throbbing in his head. Far away from you. Reynolds studied him for a moment, then nodded to Cole. Bring him inside. We need to have a chat. Adrienne's face went pale when she saw Russell, her hand flying to her mouth. Russell, how did you? Travis told me about your little love nest, Russell said, his voice devoid of emotion. Seems like there's a lot you've been keeping from me, Adrienne. Reynolds shoved Russell into a chair, securing his hands behind him with more zip ties. Family reunion. How touching. You won't get away with this, Russell said calmly. Major Wilson knows I'm here. If I don't check in within the hour, this place will be swarming with MPs. Reynolds laughed. Nice try, Boyd. We both know special forces operators like you don't call for backup that easily. You came alone, hoping to play hero. He leaned in close. Where's the boy, really? Is he outside? In your car. Russell maintained eye contact, his expression neutral. He's with Wilson, giving a full statement about everything you've done. The threats, the manipulation, the planned ambush. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Reynolds' face. He's lying, Adrienne said quickly. Travis wouldn't betray us like that. Betray you? Russell's laugh was bitter. That's rich, coming from a woman who's been selling military secrets while her husband was deployed. Reynolds straightened up, his composure returning. It doesn't matter. We're leaving tonight, with or without the boy. The buyers are still interested in what we can provide. The intelligence Adrienne stole for you is already compromised, Russell said. Wilson's team is changing all the security protocols as we speak. There will be other opportunities, Reynolds replied with a cold smile. Your wife has been very helpful in establishing connections within base. We just need to get to our extraction point. Cole moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Speaking of which, we should move. Dawn's coming soon. Reynolds nodded. Pack the essentials. We're out in 5. As Reynolds and Cole began gathering equipment, Adrienne approached Russell, her eyes pleading. Russell, please, she whispered. This got out of hand. I never meant for things to go this far. Russell looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since entering the cabin. The woman he had loved, the mother of his child, now a stranger willing to betray not just her marriage vows, but her country. When did you stop loving me, Adrienne? He asked quietly. Her eyes dropped. I don't know. Maybe after your second deployment, when you came back, different, distant. Liam made me feel seen, appreciated. And selling military secrets? Was that also about feeling appreciated? She flinched. The money was good. We were drowning in debt after my father's medical bills. Liam said nobody would get hurt. People always get hurt, Adrienne. That's the one guarantee in this life. A noise outside drew everyone's attention. Reynolds moved to the window, gun raised. What was that? He demanded. Before anyone could answer, the cabin was plunged into darkness as the power was cut. Cole, check the breaker, Reynolds commanded, switching on a tactical flashlight. On it, Cole replied, moving toward the back door. The moment Cole opened the door, a canister came flying through, bouncing across the floor before erupting in a cloud of tear gas. Russell, anticipating the attack, had already started working on his restraints, dislocating his thumb to slip one hand free. As Reynolds and Adrienne began coughing and staggering in the gas, Russell lunged forward, tackling Reynolds to the ground. The two men fought brutally in the darkness, both trained killers with years of combat experience. Reynolds landed a powerful blow to Russell's kidneys, but Russell countered with an elbow strike that shattered Reynolds' nose. Outside, Cole's shout was cut short by the sound of a scuffle, followed by silence. Russell gained the upper hand, pinning Reynolds beneath him. It's over, he growled, his hand closing around Reynolds' throat. Not quite, Reynolds gasped, his hand reaching for something in his waistband. Russell saw the glint of a blade too late. The knife slashed across his ribs, cutting deep. He rolled away, hand pressed to the wound as Reynolds staggered to his feet. "You're good, Boyd," Reynolds admitted, wiping blood from his face. "But I didn't survive 3 tours in Fallujah by playing fair." Before Reynolds could advance, the front door burst open and armed military police poured in, weapons trained on Reynolds. "Drop the weapon. On the ground now," their leader shouted. Reynolds, calculating his odds, slowly lowered the knife and knelt with his hands behind his head. As the MPs secured Reynolds and the still coughing Adrian, Major Wilson entered, helping Russell to his feet. "Cutting a bit close, weren't you?" Russell said through gritted teeth, blood seeping between his fingers. Wilson grimaced. "Your son called it in. Smart kid. Decided not to stay in the car like you told him." Russell looked past Wilson to where Travis stood in the doorway, his young face a mixture of relief and trauma. "Travis," Russell called. "You okay?" Travis nodded, unable to speak as he watched his mother being handcuffed. "Medic!" Wilson shouted, noticing Russell's wound. "We need a medic here." As a medic approached to treat him, Russell kept his eyes on Travis. "It's going to be okay, son," he said, though he wasn't sure himself if that was true. Chapter 5. Broken Trust. The military hospital was quiet at 3 in the morning. Russell sat on the edge of his bed, ignoring the pain from his 20 stitches as he read through the preliminary report Wilson had brought him. Liam and Cole Reynolds were in military custody, facing charges of conspiracy, attempted murder of a federal officer, espionage, and a dozen other violations. Derek Reynolds and the third man from Russell's house were also in custody. Adrian was being held as a material witness and co-conspirator. "How's Travis holding up?" Russell asked, looking up from the report. Wilson sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Child Services has him temporarily. He's been asking for you. The psychologist says he's in shock, but physically he's unharmed." Russell nodded, his jaw tight. "I want him back with me as soon as possible." "You'll need to give a full statement first," Wilson said. "The JAG office has questions about those 3 men in your house. Self-defense seems clear, but they need details." "They came to kill me, Wilson. What more do they need to know?" "It's procedure, you know that. Especially given the severity of their injuries." Wilson paused. "Cole Reynolds claims you broke his arm after he was already subdued." Russell's expression didn't change. "He's lying. He resisted, threatened my son. I used necessary force to protect my home." Wilson studied him for a moment. "The doctors say Cole's arm was broken in 3 places. His hand may never fully recover. Are you here as my friend or as part of the investigation?" "Both," Wilson admitted. "I need to know what happened, Russell. The full story." Russell set the report aside. "They came into my home armed, planning to use my son as bait to lure me to my death. They were working with my wife to steal classified technology and sell it to foreign buyers. What happened in my house was the minimal force required to ensure my son's safety." Wilson held his gaze before finally nodding. "I'll make sure that's clear in my report." He stood to leave, then hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Reynolds isn't talking, but Adrian is. She's offering information in exchange for leniency." "What kind of information?" "Names of the buyers. Details about other operations Reynolds and his brothers were involved in." "And?" Wilson looked uncomfortable. "She's claiming she was coerced. Says Reynolds threatened her and Travis if she didn't cooperate." Russell's laugh was hollow. "She took my son to their love nest for months. She stole classified information from my personal files." "That sound like coercion to you?" "No," Wilson admitted. "But her lawyer is spinning a compelling narrative. Vulnerable military wife, lonely during husband's deployments, manipulated by a predatory ex-soldier. Will it work?" Russell asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "It might reduce her sentence, but she's still looking at serious time." Wilson headed for the door. "Get some rest. I'll have Travis brought here tomorrow once your statement is processed." After Wilson left, Russell sat in the darkened hospital room, thinking about Travis. The boy had watched his mother betraying his father, had been threatened and manipulated by Reynolds, and now had witnessed violence most adults never experienced. How did someone come back from that kind of trauma? The next morning, a JAG officer took Russell's statement. He recounted the events clinically, unemotionally, presenting the facts without embellishment. The officer seemed satisfied, informing Russell that based on the evidence and Major Wilson's recommendation, no charges will be filed regarding the confrontation in his home. By afternoon, Travis arrived, escorted by a social worker. The boy looked smaller somehow, diminished by the events of the past days. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking as Russell embraced him. "I'm here," Russell assured him. "I've got you." The social worker gave them privacy, and for a while, they just sat together in silence. Finally, Travis spoke. "Is Mom going to prison?" Russell considered his words carefully. "Yes. What she did was very serious." "Because of the affair?" "No. Because she and Reynolds were stealing military secrets to sell to other countries. That's called treason, and it's one of the most serious crimes there is." Travis nodded, processing this. "She said she did it for us, for a better life." Russell felt anger flare, but kept his voice steady. "That was a lie, Travis. We didn't need money that badly. She did it for herself and for Reynolds. What's going to happen to me?" "You'll stay with me," Russell said firmly. "We'll get through this together." Travis looked down at his hands. "I told them things about you, about your work. I helped them. You were threatened and manipulated by adults who should have protected you. None of this is your fault. But if I had told you sooner, then Reynolds might have hurt you," Russell interrupted. "You survived, Travis. You did what you had to do, and when the moment came, you made the right choice. You warned me. You called Major Wilson when I told you to stay in the car. You saved my life." Tears filled Travis's eyes. "I was so scared." Russell pulled him into another embrace. "I know, but you were brave when it counted." As Travis cried against his shoulder, Russell made a silent vow. Reynolds and his brothers would pay for what they'd done to his son. Adrian would face justice for her betrayal. But that wasn't enough. There were still the buyers, the people willing to purchase stolen American military technology. People who would have benefited from his death and his son's trauma. They would pay too. All of them. 2 weeks later, Russell and Travis moved into a new house on the other side of town. The old house held too many painful memories, and Russell wanted a fresh start for both of them. Travis enrolled in a new school, began seeing a therapist specializing in trauma, and slowly, day by day, showed signs of recovery. Russell returned to duty, though he requested a temporary transfer to base operations while he sorted out his personal life. Wilson arranged it, understanding that Russell needed time to be there for Travis. The legal proceedings moved forward. Liam and his brothers were denied bail, deemed flight risks due to their connections overseas. Adrienne's cooperation earned her a separate detention facility, but her plea deal was still being negotiated. Russell visited her once, a month after the arrest. She sat across from him in the visitation room, the orange jumpsuit making her look pale and drawn. "Thank you for coming," she said. "How's Travis?" "Healing," Russell replied. "No thanks to you." She flinched. "I never wanted him involved. That was Liam's idea, but you allowed it. You watched our son being threatened and manipulated, and you did nothing." "I was in too deep by then," she said, her eyes pleading. "Liam had evidence of my involvement. If I tried to back out, he would have exposed me. So you chose him over your own son's safety." She looked away. "I made terrible choices. I know that. Your lawyer says you're cooperating." Naming names. She nodded. "It's the only way to reduce my sentence. I know I'm going to prison. Russell. I just don't want to spend the rest of my life there." "Who were the buyers?" Russell asked, his voice calm despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. "My lawyer advised me not to discuss case details with anyone," she said carefully. Russell leaned forward. "I'm not asking as part of the case, Adrian. I'm asking as the man whose life you tried to destroy. I deserve to know who was willing to pay for my death." She hesitated, then sighed. "A consortium. 3 major players. A Russian arms dealer named Petrov, a Chinese technology firm operating through shell companies, and a domestic contractor trying to get ahead on the bidding for next-gen military tech." "Names," Russell pressed. "I can't, Russell. If we got back that I told you." She shuddered. "These people have long reaches, even into prisons." Russell sat back, his expression unreadable. "You should have thought about dangerous associates before you got into bed with Reynolds." "I know you'll never forgive me," she said quietly. "But please, for Travis's sake, don't let your anger consume you. He needs his father." "Don't you dare use our son to manipulate me," Russell said, his voice deadly quiet. "You lost that right when you put his life at risk." He stood to leave, but Adrienne called after him. "Russell, wait. There's something else you should know." She lowered her voice. "Reynolds had other partners, people even he was afraid of. They don't know I've given up his name, but if they find out, they might come looking to tie up loose ends." "Are you saying my son is still in danger?" She nodded, her eyes fearful. "Be careful. Watch over him." As Russell left the detention center, he knew Adrienne was trying to manipulate him again, using concern for Travis to gain his sympathy. But what if there was truth to her warning? Reynolds' operation had seemed sophisticated, well-funded. There could easily be other players in the shadows, people who had invested in the intelligence Adrienne and Reynolds were selling, people who might not appreciate the operation being shut down. Chapter 6: Ghosts in the Shadows. Russell established new routines for himself and Travis, carefully designed to appear normal while incorporating security measures. Different routes to school each day, regular check-ins, a new security system of the house. Travis didn't complain. The recent events had made him hyper-vigilant, aware of threats in a way no 14-year-old should be. 3 months passed without incident. The Reynolds brothers remained in custody, awaiting trial. Adrienne accepted a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for her full cooperation. The news reported the disruption of an espionage ring targeting military technology, but the details remained classified. Russell kept digging. Using contacts from his Special Forces days, calling in favors, he began mapping the network behind Reynolds' operation. Adrienne had mentioned 3 main buyers. Russell identified 2. Viktor Petrov, a Russian arms dealer operating through proxies in Eastern Europe, and Tech Fusion, a Chinese firm with ties to their military. The third buyer, the domestic contractor, proved more elusive. Russell suspected it was one of the major defense corporations, but there were dozens of possibilities, all with the resources and motivation to acquire advanced military technology through back channels. Wilson provided what information he could without compromising the ongoing investigation. "The FBI has taken over that aspect," he told Russell during one of their regular meetings. "They're following money trails, communications. It's slow work." "Too slow," Russell replied. "If these people decide to tie up loose ends, Travis could be in danger." "We have no evidence they're even aware of Travis's role," Wilson pointed out. "As far as most people know, you discovered your wife's affair and the plot through your own investigation. Travis is just a victim in the official narrative. Reynolds knows the truth. So do his brothers, if they talk to the right people." Wilson sighed. "I can assign a protective detail if you're really concerned." Russell shook his head. "No. More people means more visibility, more opportunities for leaks. We keep this contained." That night, as Russell was checking the security feeds before bed, he noticed a car passing their house for the 3rd time in an hour. Nothing obvious, a dark sedan with tinted windows, moving at legal speed. But Russell recognized surveillance when he saw it. He activated a secondary security protocol on his phone, sending the car's license plate to a private investigator he'd hired, former Army intelligence, someone who knew how to be discreet. The response came an hour later. The car was registered to a shell company tied to Meridian Defense Solutions, one of the largest military contractors in the country. The third buyer. They had found him. Russell didn't sleep that night, instead planning contingencies. He couldn't go to the authorities without revealing that he'd been conducting his own unauthorized investigation. Besides, companies like Meridian had former generals on their boards, political connections at the highest levels. The system might not protect him or Travis if Meridian decided they were liabilities. The next morning, he called Travis's school to report him sick, then took him to a cabin owned by a former teammate, 50 miles away in the mountains. "What's going on, Dad?" Travis asked as they drove, clearly unsettled by the sudden trip. "Just being cautious," Russell replied. "Remember how we talked about situations requiring extra security?" Travis nodded. his expression serious beyond his years. Is it because of Mom or Liam? In a way, some people connected to them might be watching us. This is just temporary until I can resolve the situation. At the cabin, Russell set up security measures while Travis settled in. The place was remote, defensible, stocked with supplies. His teammate had used it as a safe house during his private security days. "You'll stay here with Brian," Russell explained, introducing Travis to his former teammate. "He'll keep you safe while I take care of some business in town." "You're leaving?" Travis asked, panic edging into his voice. Russell knelt to meet his son's eyes. "Just for a few days. Brian is one of the best soldiers I ever served with. You'll be safer with him than with me right now. Why can't we both stay here?" "Because I need to make sure these people understand that coming after my family is a mistake they won't live to repeat." Travis studied his father's face. "You're going after them, aren't you? The people Mom and Liam were working for." Russell considered lying, then decided against it. Travis had seen too much deception already. "Yes, they need to understand there are consequences." "Will you kill them?" Travis asked, his voice small but steady. Russell placed his hands on his son's shoulders. "I'm going to do whatever is necessary to ensure you're safe. Not just tomorrow or next week, but for good. Can you trust me on this?" After a long moment, Travis nodded. Back in the city, Russell began his operation methodically. The PI had identified the surveillance team as private security contractors working for Meridian Defense Solutions. For men, rotating in shifts, keeping eyes on Russell's house and tracking his movements. Rather than avoiding them, Russell let them follow him, establishing a predictable pattern while gathering information on their procedures. They were professionals, but they weren't special forces. They hadn't been trained to watch for the kind of counter-surveillance techniques Russell employed. Within 3 days, he had identified their command structure, their communications protocols, and most importantly, the location of their local operations center, a nondescript office building owned by another Meridian shell company. On the 4th night, Russell made his move. Dressed in black tactical gear, he accessed the building through a maintenance entrance, bypassing the security system using techniques honed through years of covert operations. The night security guard never saw him coming. A quick, silent takedown with no permanent damage. In the security office, Russell accessed the computer system, downloading files, communications logs, anything that might identify who at Meridian had authorized the operation against him and his family. He found what he needed in an encrypted folder: operation reports, surveillance photos of him and Travis, and most damning of all, communications with someone identified only as director authorizing containment protocols if Russell showed signs of investigating Meridian's connection to Reynolds. Containment protocols. Russell knew what that meant in their world. His and Travis's lives had been conditionally forfeit, pending Meridian's assessment of the threat they posed. As he was preparing to leave, voices in the hallway alerted him to the arrival of the night shift security team. 2 men, from the sound of their conversation, coming to relieve the guard he'd incapacitated. Russell could have slipped away unnoticed. That would have been the prudent move. But these men worked for the organization threatening his son. Prudence wasn't his priority anymore. The security team entered the office to find their colleague unconscious and Russell waiting in the shadows. Their training kicked in. Both reached for their weapons, but Russell was already moving, a ghost in the darkness. The first man went down with a crushed larynx, gasping soundlessly on the floor. The second managed to draw his gun before Russell's strike dislocated his shoulder and sent the weapon clattering away. A precise blow to the temple rendered him unconscious. Russell gathered the fallen weapons, along with the data he'd downloaded, and exited the building as silently as he'd entered. No alarms, no witnesses, nothing to indicate this was anything more than a random break-in. But Russell had left something behind, a small card with a simple message tucked into the pocket of the man with the crushed larynx. It read, "Tell Meridian's director that Russell Boyd sends his regards." This was a warning. There won't be a second one. The next morning, Russell called a number he'd found in the encrypted files. It rang 3 times before being answered. Security operations, a clipped voice stated. "I need to speak with Director Hargrove," Russell said. "Tell him it's Russell Boyd, and this conversation will determine whether his security team lives through the night. A pause, then, hold, please. 2 minutes later, a deeper voice came on the line. Mr. Boyd, you've been busy. Your surveillance team is sloppy, Director Hargrove. Your security protocols are outdated, and your communication security is compromised. I have everything: the connection to Reynolds, the authorization for containment protocols against me and my son. That's quite an accusation, Hargrove replied, his tone measured. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Russell said. The question is whether you understand who you're dealing with. I'm not some civilian you can intimidate or eliminate. I've spent 15 years learning how to hunt and kill people far more dangerous than corporate executives playing at espionage. What do you want, Boyd? A meeting. Just you and me. We need to come to an understanding about my family's continued safety and your company's continued existence. A long pause followed. The Renaissance Hotel. Downtown. Room 1242. 1 hour. I'll be there, Russell said. And Hargrove? If this is a setup, what I did to your security team will seem merciful compared to what comes next. He hung up, checking his weapons one last time before heading to the meeting that would determine whether the threat to Travis ended today, or whether Russell would need to dismantle Meridian Defense Solutions piece by bloody piece. Chapter 7. Calculated Risks. The Renaissance Hotel lobby bustled with business travelers and tourists, none noticing the focused intensity of the man who entered at precisely 10 a.m. Russell had arrived 30 minutes early, surveilling the building's entrances and exits, noting security camera placements, identifying hotel staff versus potential operatives. He took the service elevator to the 11th floor, then used the stairs to approach room 1242 from an unexpected direction. The hallway was clear, no obvious security, no housekeeping carts that might conceal personnel. Either Hargrove was supremely confident, or this was an elaborate trap. Russell knocked 3 times, then stepped to the side of the door, hand resting on the concealed weapon at his waist. "It's open," came a voice from inside. Russell entered cautiously, scanning the room in one practice sweep. A suite, expensively furnished. A man in his 60s sat in an armchair by the window, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. No obvious weapons, no visible security. "Mr. Boyd," the man said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. "I'm Thomas Hargrove. I believe we have matters to discuss." Russell remained standing. "Search protocols first. I'll check you, you check me, then we talk." Hargrove raised an eyebrow, but stood, allowing Russell to conduct a thorough pat-down. Finding no weapons, Russell submitted to the same. Only then did he take the offered seat. "I must admit," Hargrove said, returning to his chair, "your methods are direct. Breaking into one of our facilities, assaulting our personnel. Your personnel were surveilling my home, monitoring my child," Russell replied coldly. "Consider yourselves fortunate I didn't employ more permanent solutions." Hargrove studied him. "You're everything your file suggested. Efficient, ruthless when necessary, protective of your own. My file. Meridian does its homework, Mr. Boyd. When Liam Reynolds approached us with his proposal, we conducted thorough background checks on everyone involved, including you." "Reynolds approached you," Russell said. "Not the other way around." "Correct. He claimed to have access to next-generation military technology through his relationship with your wife. We expressed interest, naturally. Such acquisitions can save years of R&D. Industrial espionage," Russell clarified. "Treason." Hargrove waved a dismissive hand. "Corporate intelligence gathering. And as for treason, Meridian is an American company. The technology would have remained in American hands, just under our patents rather than the government's. And the Russian and Chinese buyers Reynolds was also dealing with." A flicker of surprise crossed Hargrove's face. If Reynolds was negotiating with foreign entities, that was not part of our arrangement. Your arrangement involved stealing classified technology and eliminating anyone who got in your way, Russell said, leaning forward. "Including me, including my 14-year-old son." "A misunderstanding," Hargrove said smoothly. "The containment protocols were a contingency, not an active directive. Standard procedure when dealing with potential security risks." I have the communications, Hargrove. I know the surveillance team was authorized to contain us if necessary. Only if you demonstrated knowledge of Meridian's involvement, Hargrove admitted, which, unfortunately, you now have. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Russell tensed, preparing for a hidden attack. Relax, Mr. Boyd, Hargrove said, noting his reaction. If I wanted you eliminated, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then what do you want? Hargrove sighed, suddenly looking older. Meridian made a miscalculation partnering with Reynolds. His operation was sloppier than we anticipated, his methods more brutal than we would have sanctioned. When we learned he was threatening a child, your son, I personally initiated a review of our involvement. You expect me to believe you developed a conscience? I expect you to understand business, Mr. Boyd. Dead soldiers and traumatized children create investigations, media attention, political fallout. Bad for the bottom line. Russell studied the man, searching for deception. So you're cutting ties with Reynolds? We already have. All communications ceased when he was arrested. As far as Meridian is concerned, we never had contact with him. And my family? The surveillance? A precaution that is no longer necessary, Hargrove said. You have my word that Meridian will maintain its distance from you and your son. Russell laughed humorlessly. Your word means nothing to me. I need guarantees, such as complete cessation of all surveillance, a signed confession detailing Meridian's involvement with Reynolds, to be held by my attorney and released if anything happens to me or my son, and financial compensation for the trauma your company helped inflict on my family. Hargrove considered this. The surveillance can end immediately. The confession is out of the question, too much liability. As for compensation, he paused. What figure did you have in mind? $2 million. In a trust for my son. Extortion, Mr. Boyd. Restitution, Russell corrected. A small price for your company to avoid a scandal that would tank your stock and end your government contracts. Hargrove was silent for a long moment, his expression calculating. Finally, he nodded. $1 million. Transferred to a trust of your choosing. In exchange for your silence regarding Meridian's tangential connection to this unfortunate affair. And what assurance do I have that once I leave this room, you won't simply decide to eliminate the problem permanently? Hargrove reached into his jacket, moving slowly to avoid alarming Russell, and withdrew a thumb drive. This contains evidence of Meridian's involvement in 3 other questionable acquisitions over the past decade. If anything happens to you or your son, this information becomes public. Mutually assured destruction, Mr. Boyd. The foundation of any lasting peace. Russell took the drive, considering the offer. He didn't trust Hargrove or Meridian, but the arrangement made a certain cold, pragmatic sense. Corporations like Meridian operated on risk assessment. If the risk of eliminating Russell outweighed the risk of paying him off, they would choose the latter. One more condition, Russell said. Reynolds and his brothers. I want them to understand that any deal they might have had with Meridian is finished. That if they mention your company's name, even once, they won't live to see trial. Hargrove's smile was thin. That could be arranged. Prison populations can be unpredictable. Not good enough, Russell replied. I want to deliver the message personally. That would be highly irregular. They're in military custody, awaiting trial on federal charges. You have the connections to make it happen, Russell said. One visit, supervised if necessary. Hargrove studied him, then nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements. But understand this, Mr. Boyd. If you harm Reynolds while visiting him, our agreement is void. I don't need to harm him, Russell said. I just need him to understand the consequences of threatening my family. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the exchange of secure contact information. Russell left the hotel the same way he'd entered, watchful for any sign of surveillance or a double cross. There was none. 2 days later, a notification on his secure phone indicated that $1 million had been transferred to a newly created trust in Travis's name. The same day, he received visitor authorization for the military detention facility where Liam Reynolds was being held. Russell returned to the mountain cabin to check on Travis before his visit to Reynolds. The boy was doing better under Brian's watchful, sleeping through the night, spending time outdoors, gradually regaining the confidence that Reynolds had stolen from him. Is it over? Travis asked when Russell told him they could return home soon. Almost, Russell replied. There's one more piece to take care of. Then we can start rebuilding. Mom's preliminary hearing is next week, Travis said quietly. Her lawyer called. They want me to testify. Russell froze. Testify about what? About Liam. How he threatened me. Made me do things. Travis looked down. They think it will help Mom's case if I tell the court she was threatened too. Was she? Russell asked carefully. Did you ever see Reynolds threaten your mother the way he threatened you? Travis was silent for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. She seemed happy with him, until everything fell apart. Russell placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You don't have to testify if you don't want to. And if you do, you only tell the truth. What you saw, what you experienced. Nothing more, nothing less. Travis nodded, relief evident in his eyes. I just want it to be over. It will be, Russell promised. Sooner than you think. The military detention facility was a stark, imposing structure of concrete and steel. Russell was searched, scanned, and escorted through multiple security checkpoints before being led to a visitation room. Liam Reynolds was already seated at a steel table, hands cuffed to a ring bolted to its surface. He looked up as Russell entered, surprise quickly masked by a smirk. Boyd, didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to see you face to face, Russell said, taking the seat opposite him. To deliver a message. Reynolds leaned back as far as his restraints allowed. Let me guess. You're here to tell me how I ruined your life, destroyed your marriage, maybe threaten a little prison justice. No, Russell replied calmly. I'm here to thank you. Reynolds blinked, clearly thrown by the response. Thank me? For what? For showing me who my wife really was. For exposing weaknesses in my family that I can now address. For teaching my son a valuable lesson about trust and betrayal that will serve him well in life. You're welcome, Reynolds said sarcastically. Anything else? Yes. I'm also here to inform you that Meridian Defense has terminated your arrangement. The color drained from Reynolds' face. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it, Reynolds. I've seen the communications, the transfers, everything. Thomas Hargrove sends his regrets, but your services are no longer required. You spoke to Hargrove? Reynolds asked, his composure slipping. We came to an understanding. Meridian is walking away from this entire situation, including you and your brothers. Reynolds leaned forward, lowering his voice. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Boyd. Meridian isn't just some defense contractor. They've got operations globally, connections to intelligence agencies. If Hargrove feels threatened, Hargrove isn't the one you should be worried about, Russell interrupted. I am. You? Reynolds laughed, but there was no humor in it. What are you going to do from out there while I'm in here? Russell smiled, and something in that expression made Reynolds flinch. Let me be perfectly clear, Reynolds. You threatened my son. You tried to have me killed. There is no prison secure enough to protect you from what's coming if you ever mention my family again. Is that a threat, Boyd? Because I could have the MPs in here right now. It's not a threat, Russell replied calmly. It's a promise. From one professional to another. If any harm comes to my son, any harm at all, I will hold you personally responsible. And you know what I'm capable of. Reynolds studied him, the cockiness fading from his expression. What do you want from me? 3 things. First, you never mentioned Travis in your testimony. Not his name, not his involvement, nothing. As far as you're concerned, he doesn't exist. And the other 2? Second, you make it clear to the prosecution that Adrian was a willing participant in your operation. No coercion, no threats. She betrayed her country and her family by choice. Reynolds smiled thinly. Throwing your wife under the bus? Cold, boy. She stopped being my wife the moment she put our son in danger, Russell replied. And third, you forget anything you know about Meridian's involvement. When asked who the domestic buyer was, you don't remember, you don't know, you never had that information. And why would I do any of this for you? Russell leaned forward. Because if you don't, recordings of your conversations with Adrian planning my death will find their way to certain inmates with particular feelings about people who target soldiers' families. The kind of inmates who can reach you no matter which facility they transfer you to. Reynolds' jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Those recordings would incriminate your wife, too. Do I look like I care about protecting Adrian at this point? Russell asked. She made her choice. Now you make yours. The two men stared at each other across the table, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Reynolds looked away. Fine, he muttered. I'll keep the kid out of it, and I'll tell the truth about your wife's involvement. But Meridian is more dangerous than you realize, Boyd. If I start forgetting things they think I know. Leave Meridian to me, Russell said, standing. Focus on surviving the next 20 years in prison. It's going to be harder than you think. As Russell turned to leave, Reynolds called after him. Hey, Boyd, for what it's worth, your kid's got guts. Stood up to me in the end when it counted. You should be proud. Russell paused at the door. I am proud, and that's the only reason you're still breathing. Chapter 8, Broken Pieces. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Russell attended each hearing, each preliminary motion, watching the system slowly grind toward justice. Travis testified once, a closed session with only the judge and attorneys present. He spoke the truth about Reynolds' threats, about his mother's willing participation, about the night Russell had saved him from the intruders. Liam Reynolds and his brothers accepted plea deals rather than risk trial. 25 years each in federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 15. The official charges were conspiracy, attempted murder of a federal officer, and espionage. Adrienne's case proved more complicated. With Travis's testimony contradicting her claims of coercion, the prosecution took a harder line. Her attorney still managed to negotiate a reduced sentence, 12 years, eligible for parole after 8, in exchange for her continued cooperation in identifying other members of Reynolds' network. Throughout the proceedings, Russell maintained his silence about Meridian's involvement. Hargrove kept his end of the bargain. No further surveillance, no attempts to interfere. The trust for Travis remained intact, growing steadily for his future education. Life settled into a new routine. Russell requested and received a transfer to a training position, allowing him more regular hours to be home with Travis. The boy began therapy, working through the trauma of betrayal and manipulation. There were nightmares, anxiety attacks, moments of rage and grief, but gradually, healing began. 6 months after Reynolds' sentencing, Russell received a request from Adrian to visit her in prison. His first instinct was to refuse, but after discussing it with Travis's therapist, he reconsidered. Closure might be beneficial, not just for him, but for his understanding of how to help Travis. The women's detention facility was less imposing than the military prison where Reynolds was held, but the security was just as tight. Adrienne had lost weight, her once styled hair now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the setting and her circumstances. Thank you for coming, she said as Russell took his seat across from her. Why did you want to see me, Adrienne? She looked down at her hands. I've had a lot of time to think in here, about the choices I made, the people I hurt. And I wanted to apologize. Not just for the affair, but for everything. For betraying your trust, for putting Travis in danger, for being so blind to what Reynolds really was. Russell studied her, searching for manipulation or deception. He found only exhaustion and regret. It's too late for apologies, he said finally. What's done is done. I know, she admitted. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I understand now. How completely I destroyed everything we had. Why did you do it? Russell asked, the question that had haunted him for months. We had a good life. A family. Was it just the money? Adrienne was silent for a long moment. It started as an affair. Simple, selfish. You were gone so much, and when you were home, you were distant. Liam made me feel desired, important. She shook her head. The information came later. Small things at first, your deployment dates, general locations. He paid well, and it seemed harmless. Harmless, Russell repeated, his voice flat. I told myself it was, she admitted. By the time I realized what he was really after, I was in too deep. He had evidence of my involvement. If I'd backed out, I'd have gone to prison anyway. So you decided to help him plan my death instead? She flinched. I never believed he would actually harm you. I thought it would just be stealing information. Technology, not murder. You knew exactly what he was planning, Adrian. Don't lie to me now. Not after everything. Tears filled her eyes. You're right. I knew, and I did nothing to stop it. I convinced myself it wasn't real, that it would never happen. She wiped her eyes. How is Travis? Healing, Russell said. No thanks to you. Will you let me see him? Just once? Russell's expression hardened. That's his decision, not mine. He's old enough to choose whether he wants contact with you. I won't force him either way. And us? Is there any chance? There is no us, Adrian. There never will be again. You didn't just betray me as a husband. You betrayed me as a soldier, as an American. You put our son in danger. There's no coming back from that. She nodded, accepting this. I understand. I just hope someday Travis can find it in his heart to forgive me, even if you can't. Like I said, that's his choice to make. Russell stood to leave. Goodbye, Adrian. Russell, she called as he turned away. Be careful. Reynolds had other connections, people even he was afraid of, the kind of people who don't forget or forgive. Russell paused. Is that a threat, Adrian? A warning, she said quietly. I've told the FBI everything I know, but Reynolds kept some things compartmentalized. He had a partner, someone he called the Professor. I never met him, but Liam was careful not to cross him. If this professor thinks you're a liability. I can take care of myself, Russell said. And Travis? I know you can, she replied. Just watch your back. Russell left the prison with mixed emotions. Adrian seemed genuinely remorseful, but it changed nothing about the choices she'd made, the damage she'd done. And now there was this new information about the professor, another potential threat to monitor. He called Major Wilson as soon as he reached his car. Adrian mentioned someone in Reynolds' network called the Professor, Russell explained. Someone even Reynolds was cautious around. Has this come up in the investigation? Wilson was silent for a moment. Yes, but it's classified. How did she know about that? Reynolds talked about him, apparently. What do we know? Not much, Wilson admitted. An academic background, likely teaching at a university in the Northeast. Expert in advanced weapons systems, particularly AI integration. We have some electronic communications, but no clear identity. Is he a continuing threat? Honestly, we don't know. The FBI has taken the lead on that aspect. Last I heard, they had narrowed it down to 3 or 4 suspects, all with the right expertise and connections. Russell processed this. I need to know if he's a threat to Travis. I'll make some calls, Wilson promised. See what I can find out. In the meantime, stay alert. After ending the call, Russell sat in his car, thinking through the implications. Just when it seemed they were reaching resolution, a new complication emerged. He hadn't mentioned the professor to Travis, hadn't wanted to give the boy new reasons for anxiety, just as he was beginning to feel safe again. But if this person was as dangerous as Reynolds had implied to Adrian, then Russell needed to prepare. Not just for his own safety, but for Travis's as well. That evening, as Russell was helping Travis with his homework, his secure phone rang. The number was blocked. Boyd. He answered, moving into the other room. It's Hargrove, came the familiar voice. We need to talk. In person. About what? About the professor. Tonight. Same hotel, same room, 1 hour. The call ended before Russell could respond. He stared at the phone, his mind racing. How did Hargrove know about the professor? And why reach out now? Russell arranged for Brian to stay with Travis, explaining only that he had a work emergency. Travis looked worried, but didn't question it. Another sign of the lingering trauma, this constant fear that threats might reemerge at any moment. I won't be long, Russell promised. Brian will stay until I'm back. Standard procedures if anything happens. Travis nodded, their code word for the emergency protocols Russell had established. Routes to safe houses, contact methods, rendezvous points if they were separated. The Renaissance Hotel was quieter this time, the evening crowd thinner. Russell took the same precautions, approaching room 1242 via an indirect route, alert for any sign of an ambush. Hargrove was alone again, looking more haggard than during their previous meeting. Thank you for coming, he said as Russell entered. You mentioned the professor, Russell replied, remaining standing. How do you know that name? Hargrove gestured to a folder on the table between them. Because Meridian has been tracking him for years. He approached us once, offering technology similar to what Reynolds later promised. We declined. Why? His price was too high. Not just money, but access to our defense systems, our contracts with the military. Hargrove shook his head. Even for Meridian, there are lines we won't cross. Russell picked up the folder, scanning its contents. Partial communications, financial traces, surveillance photos, all related to someone identified only as P. Why show me this? Because he's looking for you, Hargrove said. Our monitoring picked up queries in certain networks, people asking questions about Russell Boyd and his son. The pattern matches the professor's methods. And why would Meridian care if he finds me? Self-interest, Hargrove admitted. If he eliminates you, the evidence you hold against us becomes public. And there's another factor. The professor has been trying to infiltrate Meridian for years. If he connects you to us, it gives him leverage he's been seeking. Russell considered this. You're not telling me everything. Hargrove sighed. No, I'm not. The full truth is that the professor was Reynolds' primary backer. The technology Reynolds was trying to acquire wasn't just for Meridian or foreign buyers. It was primarily for the professor's own operation. We were a secondary market, a way for Reynolds to maximize his profit. What operation? We don't know details. Something involving autonomous weapons systems with integrated AI, beyond cutting edge. And now he's cleaning house, Russell concluded, eliminating loose ends like me who might connect him to Reynolds. Precisely. Which is why I'm warning you. Russell closed the folder, his decision made. I need everything you have on him. Every scrap of intelligence, every suspected location, every associate. That's not part of our arrangement, Hargrove protested. It is now, Russell said. Unless you'd prefer, I go to the FBI and tell them about Meridian's involvement with Reynolds. I'm sure they'd be very interested, especially with their ongoing investigation into the professor. Hargrove studied him before nodding reluctantly. I'll have a complete file delivered to you. But understand this, Boyd. The professor is not like Reynolds. He's not a soldier or mercenary. He's something altogether more dangerous. What's that? A true believer, Hargrove said. Someone who thinks his work is so important that any price is worth paying, any life worth sacrificing. The most dangerous kind of adversary. Russell left the hotel with a folder, his mind already formulating a plan. For too long, he'd been reactive, responding to threats as they emerged. It was time to take the initiative to end this cycle of danger permanently. The professor had made a critical mistake by searching for Russell. He'd revealed himself, created a trail that could be followed back to its source. And Russell had spent 15 years learning how to follow such trails, how to find people who didn't want to be found. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. The complete file arrived the next morning, a secure digital package delivered by courier. Russell spent hours going through it, methodically building a profile of the man known as the professor. Dr. Elias Chambers, former Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, researcher, dismissed after advocating for autonomous weapons systems beyond ethical guidelines. Current position, tenured professor of advanced robotics at an Ivy League university. Published extensively on neural networks and machine learning applications in weapons systems. More concerning were his connections, former intelligence operatives, black market weapons dealers, military contractors with questionable ethics. A network that spanned continents, all serving Chambers' vision of a revolution in warfare technology. Reynolds had been just one asset in this network, tasked with acquiring specific components that Chambers needed for his prototype system. With Reynolds imprisoned, Chambers was now personally directing efforts to tie up loose ends, including Russell and potentially Travis. Russell's first instinct was to take this information to the FBI, let them handle Chambers through official channels. But the file revealed another complication. Chambers had protectors within the government, former colleagues who believed in his work despite its ethical implications. Any official investigation would trigger warnings, giving Chambers time to disappear. No, this would require a more direct approach. Russell spent the next week in careful preparation. He established secure accommodations for Travis at a military school where the son of another Special Forces operator attended, a place with security protocols designed to protect children of personnel who might be targeted. "It's just for a few weeks," Russell explained as he dropped Travis off. "Like a special training program. Jason will be there with you." Travis looked skeptical but resigned. "Is this about what Mom mentioned? The professor?" Russell shouldn't have been surprised that Travis had overheard his conversation with Wilson. The boy had developed keen situational awareness through harsh experience. "Yes," Russell admitted. "There's one more loose and I need to tie up. Then it's really over." Travis studied his father's face. "You're going after him. I'm going to make sure he never comes after us." Travis was quiet for a moment. "Just come back, okay? You're all I've got now." Russell pulled his son into a tight embrace. "I promise." With Travis secure, Russell traveled to Philadelphia, where Chambers taught at the university. He established surveillance, mapping the professor's routine, identifying vulnerabilities. Chambers was cautious, varied routes, private security, encrypted communications, but not military trained. There were openings if one knew where to look. On the fifth day, Russell identified his opportunity. Chambers had a standing reservation at an exclusive restaurant near campus every Wednesday evening. He dined alone, reviewing papers while he ate, his security detail positioned discreetly at nearby tables. Russell wouldn't confront him there. Too public, too many variables. But he could plant a listening device, gather more intelligence for the final confrontation. The device placement went smoothly. Disguised as a maintenance worker, Russell accessed the restaurant's HVAC system hours before Chambers' arrival, placing a pinhole microphone near his usual table. That evening, listening from a van parked across the street, Russell gained valuable insights. Chambers was speaking with someone on his phone. "The Boyd situation is becoming problematic. He's connected to Meridian somehow. Yes, I understand the risk. The sun remains our best leverage if direct action becomes necessary. 3 days maximum. Then we proceed regardless." Russell's blood ran cold. 3 days, and they were still considering using Travis as leverage. The timeline had just accelerated dramatically. Russell abandoned his methodical approach. The next evening, he tracked Chambers to his home, an elegant brownstone in an upscale neighborhood. Security was minimal there. One guard at the entrance, basic electronic surveillance. Chambers apparently believed his anonymous status was protection enough, a mistake Russell would exploit. At 2 a.m., when the neighborhood was silent and dark, Russell disabled the security system and entered through a service entrance. He moved through the house like a ghost, locating Chambers' bedroom on the second floor. The professor slept soundly, unaware of the intruder in his home. Russell placed a hand over Chambers' mouth, pressing his weapon against the man's temple. Chambers woke instantly, eyes wide with fear. "Dr. Chambers," Russell said quietly, "or do you prefer the professor? We need to talk." Russell secured Chambers to a chair in his home office, where soundproofing for video conferences would prevent any noise from alerting neighbors. "Russell Boyd, I presume," Chambers said, remarkably composed despite his situation. "I've been expecting you, though not quite like this." "You've been looking for me," Russell replied. "Now you've found me." Indeed, the Special Forces operator who derailed years of planning, millions in investment. The father who wouldn't look the other way when his family was threatened. "Speaking of threats," Russell said, "I heard your phone conversation. 3 days until you proceed regardless. Care to explain what that means for my son?" Chambers sighed. "A contingency. One I'd prefer not to implement." Russell's hand tightened on his weapon. "You won't be implementing anything once I'm done here. Before you do something irrevocable, Mr. Boyd, perhaps you should consider the full picture." Chambers nodded toward his computer. "Check the files marked Prometheus. See what Reynolds was really helping me acquire." Against his better judgment, Russell accessed the files, keeping Chambers in his peripheral vision. The documents detailed an autonomous defense system designed to identify and neutralize threats before they materialized: terrorist attacks, mass shootings, even military coups. "You're building an AI weapon," Russell said. "I'm building a shield," Chambers corrected. a system that could save thousands of lives, prevent conflicts before they begin, by giving an algorithm the power to decide who lives and dies, by removing human error and emotion from critical security decisions. Chambers leaned forward as far as his restraints allowed. Imagine a world where the next bin Laden is identified and neutralized before he can orchestrate an attack, where school shooters are flagged and intercepted before they can acquire weapons. And who controls this system? You. It controls itself. That's the point. No political agenda, no prejudice, no hesitation when action is required. Russell closed the files. And you think that justifies threatening a 14-year-old boy, using my son as leverage? Regrettable, Chambers admitted. Reynolds went too far there. I authorized surveillance, information gathering, but not threats against your family. That was his initiative, not mine. You expect me to believe that? Check the communications in the Rhodes folder. You'll see my explicit instructions to Reynolds that no harm should come to civilians, especially children. Russell kept his weapon trained on Chambers while he checked the reference files. The emails confirmed Chambers' claim. He had specifically instructed Reynolds to keep operations clean and to avoid involving Travis. Reynolds was becoming a liability, Chambers continued. Volatile, escalating beyond parameters. If you hadn't stopped him, I would have been forced to terminate our arrangement. Very convenient, Russell said skeptically. And now you expect me to just walk away? After your people have been searching for me, planning to use my son as leverage? Not quite. Chambers straightened in his chair. I'm offering you a choice, Mr. Boyd. Work with me instead of against me. Your skills, your experience, they would be invaluable to my operation. In exchange, I guarantee your son's absolute safety. More than safety, security, opportunities, a future beyond anything you could provide alone. Russell laughed humorlessly. You're offering me a job? After everything that's happened? I'm offering you purpose, Chambers replied. The same purpose that drove you to join the military, protecting the innocent, securing a safer world, just with more effective tools. For a moment, Russell tried to see the world through Chambers' eyes, a system that could prevent attacks before they happened, save lives that would otherwise be lost. The soldier in him recognized the appeal, but the father in him remembered Travis's fear, the trauma the boy had endured because of men like Chambers who believed the ends justified any means. You're right about one thing, Russell said finally. I do want a safer world, especially for my son. He raised his weapon, and that starts with eliminating threats like you. Chambers' composure cracked. You'd be making a terrible mistake. My work is too important. The technology is already developed, the network established. Killing me won't stop it. I'm not going to kill you, Professor, Russell said, lowering his weapon. I'm going to expose you. He held up a small device. Everything you've said in the last hour has been recorded. Your files have been copied. By morning, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the University Board will all have detailed evidence of your operation, your methods, and your threats against a military family. They'll bury it, Chambers said desperately. I have connections, people who understand the importance of my work. Some might try, Russell acknowledged. But I've learned a few things about leverage myself. The files have also gone to selected media outlets, congressional oversight committees, and military intelligence. Too many channels to suppress completely. He stood, pocketing the recording device. Your career is over, Professor. Your network will be dismantled. Your technology will be seized. And you'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison wondering where you miscalculated. They'll come after you, Chambers warned. My associates, my backers. They have resources you can't imagine. Let them come, Russell replied calmly. I'll be waiting. But understand this. If anything happens to my son, if he so much as has a nightmare because of you or your people, there won't be a place on this earth where you can hide from me. And next time, I won't be so merciful. Russell left Chambers secured to the chair, the evidence already transmitting to the destinations he'd arranged. By the time the professor was found, it would be too late to contain the damage. 3 days later, the news broke. Dr. Elias Chambers, respected academic and defense consultant, arrested on charges of conspiracy, illegal weapons development, espionage, and threatening a federal officer's family. His network was unraveling as associates scrambled to distance themselves or negotiate deals. Russell watched the coverage from the military school where he'd reunited with Travis. The boy seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Is it really over this time?" Travis asked as they packed his things. Russell nodded. "Chambers' operation is shut down. The people who protected him are running scared. There's no one left to threaten us." "What about Mom?" "She's where she needs to be," Russell said, serving her sentence, facing the consequences of her choices. "Will I ever see her again?" Russell placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "That's up to you when you're ready. She's still your mother, despite everything. But no one will force you to have contact if you don't want it." Travis considered this. "Maybe someday. Not now. Wherever and whenever you decide, I'll support you." As they drove home, Travis asked the question Russell had been expecting. "What happens to us now, Dad?" Russell had given this considerable thought. "I've requested a training assignment in Colorado. Mountain Division. New place, new start for both of us. If you're okay with that." Travis looked out at the passing landscape. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." Russell smiled, feeling true hope for the first time in months. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be scars, memories that couldn't be erased. But they would face them together, father and son, survivors of a betrayal that had failed to break them. As for Adrian, Reynolds, Chambers, and all the others who had plotted against them, they were fragments of a past best left behind. Russell had protected what mattered most, had shown Travis that some bonds couldn't be broken, even by the deepest betrayal. "Colorado it is then," Russell said. "Time to start the next chapter." Travis smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm ready if you are." And for the first time since that night, he'd heard Travis's warning on the phone. Russell truly believed they would be okay. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Morning. Matthew McElroy poured 2 cups of coffee in the sunlit kitchen of their Craftsman home in Portland, the way he had every Saturday morning for the past 8 years. At 42, he'd built a comfortable life as a private security consultant after leaving the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. The work was less demanding now, fewer sleepless nights chasing monsters, more time designing security protocols for corporate clients. Meredith emerged from the bedroom wearing his old Georgetown sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She kissed his cheek and wrapped her hands around the warm mug, exactly the way she always did. "What time is your meeting Monday?" she asked, settling into the breakfast nook. 10. The Hollister Tech contract should be straightforward. Matthew sat across from her, watching morning light filter through the window. Everything felt exactly as it should be. Ordinary. Safe. His phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Mr. McElroy?" A woman's voice, professional but strained. "This is Ramiro Fulton from the Multnomah County Clerk's office. I'm calling regarding documentation for Meredith Louise McElroy, born March 15th, 1985. "Yes." Matthew glanced at Meredith, who was scrolling through her phone. "Sir, we're processing your wife's death certificate and need to confirm a few details for our records." The coroner's office has. The world tilted. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "The death certificate, sir. We have some inconsistencies in the paperwork from a medical examiner, and I need to verify. There's a mistake." Matthew's voice came out harder than intended. Meredith looked up, confused. "My wife is sitting right next to me." Silence on the line. Then, barely a whisper, "Sir, that's impossible. We have a body. The coroner is with me right now. The dental records match. The fingerprints match. The woman sitting next to you." The clerk's voice cracked. "Sir, that's not your wife." Matthew's hand tightened on the phone. "This is some kind of sick joke. Mr. McElroy, please listen carefully. Your wife Meredith was found deceased 3 days ago in a hotel room in Seattle. Apparent suicide by prescription overdose. Her body was transported to our facility after positive identification by her sister, Patricia Frazier. We've been trying to reach you, but Meredith doesn't have a sister. The words came automatically. He was watching Meredith now, really watching her. She set down her phone, concern crossing her features. Everything okay, babe? That voice. Her voice. The same cadence, the same slight rasp from years of teaching high school English. According to our records, Patricia Frazier is listed as next of kin. She provided identification and, Mr. McElroy, are you still there? What hotel? The Cascade Inn in Seattle, room 447. Sir, I strongly suggest you come to our office immediately. And please, be careful. The line went dead. Matthew set the phone down slowly. Across from him, Meredith's expression shifted from concern to something else. Something he couldn't quite read. Who was that? She asked. Wrong number. He kept his voice level, engaging the training that had served him through 200 FBI investigations. Never telegraph. Never show your hand. Hey, didn't you mention wanting to visit your mom this weekend? My mom's been dead for 6 years, Matthew. You know that, right? Sorry, still half asleep. He smiled, watching her carefully. No tells. No micro-expressions suggesting deception. If this was an act, it was flawless. But his mind was already working, cataloging details. Meredith had a small scar on her left wrist from a childhood bicycle accident. He glanced down. The scar was there. She had a habit of tapping her index finger twice when she was thinking. She did it now, twice precise. Yet something felt wrong. Not obviously, not in any way he could articulate. It was the feeling he used to get before walking into an ambush, the sixth sense that separated the living from the dead in his old line of work. I need to run to the office, he said, standing. Forgot some files I need for Monday. On Saturday morning? Won't take long. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in her shampoo. The same lavender scent. Everything the same, everything wrong. In the car, Matthew called his former partner at the FBI, Glenn Henderson. McElroy, it's been months. You finally admitting you missed the bureau. Glenn, I need you to run something for me. Quietly, the levity drained from Henderson's voice. What's going on? Check if there's a Jane Doe or any deceased female matching my wife's description process through Seattle or Portland in the last week. Jesus, Matt. Is Meredith? Just check. And Glenn, don't call my house. I'll call you back in 30 minutes. Matthew drove to his office, a small suite in a downtown high-rise. He unlocked the door and went straight to his private server, the one with files he'd kept from his FBI days. Files he probably shouldn't have, but couldn't bring himself to destroy. 7 years ago, Matthew had been the lead agent on a case that made national headlines. Roger Fletcher, a charismatic con artist who'd orchestrated an elaborate identity theft ring that destroyed dozens of lives. But Fletcher wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing entire identities, creating perfect duplicates of people, then systematically destroying the originals. His victims often ended up dead, their deaths staged as suicides or accidents while Fletcher's accomplices assumed their lives. Matthew had spent 18 months building the case. The breakthrough came when they discovered Fletcher's daughter, Rachel Fletcher Kirby, was his primary accomplice. She was a former theater actress turned master of disguise, able to study and replicate anyone with frightening accuracy. Both were convicted. Roger got 25 years. Rachel got 15. Matthew pulled up the parole database with access credentials that should have expired but hadn't. He typed in Rachel Fletcher Kirby's inmate number. Status: released on parole. Date: 3 months ago. His phone buzzed. Henderson. Matt, I've got something. Jane Doe found in the Cascade Inn 4 days ago. Ruled probable suicide pending toxicology. Dental records came back this morning with a positive ID. Henderson paused. It's Meredith McElroy. You're Meredith. The me has her body right now. Matthew's hands went cold. Description: 5'7", brown hair, brown eyes. Distinguishing marks include a scar on the left wrist and, Matt, this doesn't make sense. The fingerprints match your wife's DMV records. Who identified the body? A woman named Patricia Frazier. claiming to be the deceased sister. Matthew pulled up Patricia Frazier's known associates from the Fletcher case files. His stomach dropped. Patricia Frazier was Rachel Fletcher Kirby's cellmate for 3 years. Released on the same day. Glenn, I need you to listen very carefully. Roger Fletcher's daughter is out, and I think she's in my house right now, living as my wife. Chapter 2. The Evidence. Matthew sat in his car outside his own home for 20 minutes, watching the windows. The woman inside moved through the kitchen, putting away dishes. From this distance, she looked exactly like Meredith. Moved like Meredith. Was Meredith in every measurable way. Except Meredith was dead. His phone rang. A blocked number. Hello, Matthew. The voice was male, smooth, cultured. A voice Matthew had heard in countless interrogation recordings. I imagine you're having quite the morning. Fletcher. Roger Fletcher laughed. Still sharp as ever. That's good. You'll need to be. You're violating parole by contacting me. Am I? Prove it. This is a burner phone in a very public place. But let's not waste time on trivialities. I wanted to call and thank you personally. For what? For the 7 years you took from me. 7 years in a cage. Matthew, thinking about what you destroyed. My business, my freedom, my daughter's future. Do you know what prison does to a man like me? I had time to plan. Time to perfect the art of revenge. Matthew's jaw clenched. Killing my wife and having your daughter impersonate her. Creative. Killing? Such ugly words. Your wife made certain choices, let's say. As for the rest, can you prove any of it? Will anyone believe the esteemed former FBI agent when he claims his wife is an imposter? When all evidence suggests she's exactly who she appears to be. What do you want, Fletcher? I want you to suffer. I want you to experience the slow dissolution of everything you built while I watch my life crumble. But here's the beautiful part. I won't lift a finger. You'll destroy yourself, Matthew. You'll become increasingly paranoid, erratic. You'll accuse your loving wife of being an imposter. People will think you're having a breakdown. Your reputation will collapse. Your business will fail. And when you're isolated and broken, when no one believes a word you say, that's when Rachel will leave you. Not before extracting every cent and asset you possess, of course. I'll prove it. Will you? How? DNA tests can be switched. Experts can be bought. And my daughter has studied Meredith for 6 months. She knows things only your wife would know. Memories, habits, intimate details. Can you really be certain of the difference? The line went dead. Matthew drove to the Multnomah County Coroner's office. The clerk, Ramiro Fulton, met him in a small, sterile waiting room. He was a thin man in his 50s, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. McElroy, I'm sorry for the shock this morning. The situation is highly unusual. I want to see the body. Fulton's eyes widened. Sir, I don't think. Now. 10 minutes later, Matthew stood in the viewing room, separated from the examination table by a glass partition. The coroner, a severe woman named Dr. Elsa Hawkins, pulled back the white sheet. Matthew's knees buckled. It was Meredith. His Meredith, pale and still, her features arranged in an expression of terrible peace. I need a moment alone, he managed. Dr. Hawkins nodded and exited. Matthew pressed his hand against the glass, his analytical mind warring with his breaking heart. The scar on the wrist, present. The small birthmark near her collarbone, present. The slight crook in her left pinky from a break that never set quite right there. But if this was Meredith, then who was in his house? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A single image, a photograph of Matthew and Meredith from their honeymoon in Santorini, taken 8 years ago at sunset. Below it, a message. She told me everything about this day. The proposal. How you burned the dinner reservations and ended up eating gyros on the beach. How she wore that blue sundress you loved. The way the wind caught her hair when you said you'd love her forever. I know it all, Matthew. Every moment. Every secret. Every fear. Can you really tell the difference? A second text. Go home to your wife. Act normal. Because if you don't, if you make a single move against me or contact the police, I disappear and your life becomes a living hell. You'll be the crazy man who murdered his wife and claimed an imposter replaced her. Who would believe such a story? Matthew steadied himself. Fletcher was right about one thing. He needed proof that would hold up. DNA could be manipulated, especially with the right connections. But there were other ways. He called Glenn Henderson. I need everything you can find on Rachel Fletcher Kirby's activities since her release. Cell phone records, credit cards, known associates. And I need to know who Patricia Frazier really is. Matt, this is insane. You're saying your wife. My wife is dead, Glenn. That woman is a world-class actress who's had months to study Meredith's life. But no one is perfect. She'll slip. They always do. What are you going to do? What I do best. Profile the predator. Matthew went home. The woman he'd left that morning, Rachel, he had to think of her as Rachel now, was reading in the living room. She looked up with a warm smile. That took a while. Everything okay? Just some complications with the Hollister contract. Matthew sat across from her, studying. Hey, remember that restaurant we went to on our 3rd anniversary? The one in Napa. She laughed. The French place with the terrible sommelier? We left after the appetizers and found that food truck instead. Best carnitas I've ever had. Correct. Perfectly correct. What was the food truck called? He pressed. Babe, I don't remember. It was 5 years ago. She set down her book, concern flickering across her face. You're being weird. What's really going on? Matthew had investigated the most complex criminal minds in the country. He'd interviewed serial killers, con artists, and sociopaths. He knew how to spot deception, how to read the microscopic tells that separated truth from lies. Rachel Fletcher Kirby gave him nothing. That night, lying in bed beside her, Matthew waited until her breathing deepened into sleep. He slipped out, careful not to disturb her, and went to his study. He pulled out the thick file he'd compiled on the Fletcher case, spreading photographs and documents across his desk. Roger Fletcher, 63, had built an empire on identity theft before the digital age made it commonplace. His method was elegant. Select a target, study them exhaustively, create a perfect duplicate using an accomplice, then engineer the original's demise while the duplicate assumed their life. He'd done this successfully 7 times before Matthew caught him. Rachel had been his most gifted student. An actress who'd struggled in legitimate theater, she'd found her calling in her father's criminal enterprise. She could become anyone, but she'd made one mistake during the investigation. She'd kept a journal, a detailed record of her transformations, including the psychological toll of losing herself in other identities. Matthew had read that journal 7 years ago during the trial. One entry stuck with him. The hardest part isn't learning to be someone else. It's remembering who you really are when it's over. Sometimes I look in the mirror and don't recognize my own face. An idea began forming. Rachel Fletcher Kirby was brilliant, but she was also damaged. And damaged people made mistakes when pressured. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Stop digging, Matthew. Accept your new reality, or lose everything trying to fight it. He texted back, You made one mistake, Rachel. You forgot that I know how you think, and I know exactly how to make you break. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. Matthew smiled for the first time since that morning. The game was on. Chapter 3, The Sister. Sunday morning arrived with uncomfortable normalcy. Rachel. Matthew forced himself to think of her by her real name. Made breakfast, eggs Benedict, Meredith's specialty. The hollandaise was perfect. I was thinking, she said, pouring orange juice. Maybe we should visit my mom's grave this week. I haven't been in a while, and I feel guilty. Matthew watched her carefully. Meredith's mother, Dorothy O'Neill, was indeed buried at Riverview Cemetery. But Meredith had never called her mom always my mother or Dorothy after their complicated relationship deteriorated in Meredith's teens. Sure, he said. We can go Tuesday. She smiled, and for a moment Matthew felt a pang of doubt. What if the coroner made a mistake? What if he was losing his mind, seeing conspiracy where there was simple tragedy? Then his phone rang. Glenn Henderson. I'll take this outside, Matthew said, stepping onto the back deck. You were right, Glenn said without preamble. Patricia Frazier is deep in this. Real name Patricia Frazier Thompson. Served 8 years for fraud and conspiracy. She and Rachel Fletcher Kirby were cellmates at Coffee Creek Correctional. But here's where it gets interesting. Patricia has a brother. Who? Fernando Thompson. Guess what he does for a living? Tell me. He's a forensic technician. Works in the King County Medical Examiner's office. Seattle. The pieces clicked together. He falsified the identification on the Jane Doe. That's my guess, but proving it will be tough. The chain of custody looks clean on paper. And get this, Patricia Frazier filed the initial missing person report on Meredith McElroy. She claimed to be Meredith's estranged sister, said Meredith had been depressed and suicidal. Building a narrative, Matthew said. If I claim my wife is an imposter, they point to the body in Seattle with perfect forensic evidence, verified by a grieving sister. It's airtight, Matt. Fletcher knew what he was doing. What about Rachel's cell phone records? That's the problem. I can't access them without a warrant, and to get a warrant, I'd need probable cause. And right now, all evidence suggests your wife is exactly who she appears to be. Matthew thought for a moment. Can you trace Fletcher's known associates? Anyone who might visit him? I'll try, but he's been careful. No violations, model prisoner, early release. He covered his tracks. After hanging up, Matthew went back inside. Rachel was washing dishes, humming something familiar. He recognized it. A song Meredith used to hum while cooking. Another perfect detail. Hey, he said casually, my buddy Glenn wants a grab dinner this week. You remember Glenn, right? She turned, smiling. Of course. Your old partner from the FBI. The one with the terrible golf swing. That's him. He wants to bring his wife. What was her name again? Rachel's smile faltered for just a microsecond. Refresh my memory? Olivia. Matthew lied. Glenn had never been married. Right, Olivia. That sounds nice. The first crack. Actually, Matthew continued, I was thinking of inviting some other people too. Make it a dinner party. Maybe some of your colleagues from school. Meredith had taught English at Lincoln High School for 6 years. She'd have specific memories of colleagues, inside jokes, shared experiences that couldn't be faked. I don't know, Rachel said carefully. I've been so busy with lesson planning. Maybe another time. Come on, it'll be fun. We can invite Heather from the English department. You two were close, right? Heather moved to California last year, Rachel said. You know that. Another test, another perfect answer. Matthew had checked. Heather Wilcox had indeed transferred to a school in San Diego. But how many details could Rachel have memorized? How deep did her preparation go? Right. Then maybe just Glenn. I'll set it up. That afternoon, while Rachel showered, Matthew went through her belongings with practiced efficiency. Her purse, her wallet, her phone. Everything matched Meredith's. The same credit cards, the same driver's license, the same photos. Even her fingerprints would match. Fletcher would have ensured that through whatever means necessary. But people left traces. Always. He found it in her jacket pocket. A receipt from a coffee shop in Salem, dated 2 weeks ago. Meredith had been in Seattle for a teaching conference that day. He checked her calendar. The conference was real. She'd marked it months ago. So who had been in Salem? Matthew photographed the receipt and sent it to Glenn. Then he put everything back exactly as he'd found it. When Rachel emerged, she found Matthew in the living room, appearing casual. Want to watch a movie? She asked. They settled on the couch with a film Meredith had loved. Halfway through, during a scene Meredith would have quoted along with, Rachel said nothing. Small detail, meaningless alone. But Matthew was building a case, brick by brick. His phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Excuse me, he said, stepping outside. Mr. McElroy? A woman's voice, nervous. This is Lydia O'Neill. I was Meredith's cousin. Matthew's pulse quickened. I heard about her death. I wanted to express my condolences. But I also wanted to warn you. A woman came to see me 3 days ago, asking questions about Meredith. Very detailed questions about her childhood, her habits, her relationships. She claimed to be writing a memorial piece for the school, but something felt wrong. What did she look like? Older, maybe 60s. Dark hair, professional. She gave me her card. Lydia paused. It said her name was Patricia Frazier, freelance journalist. But when I tried to follow up, the number was disconnected. Patricia, building the perfect duplicate required research, and Rachel would have needed help gathering every detail of Meredith's life. Did you tell her anything? I shared some memories. Family stories. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault. Lydia, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone we spoke. And if that woman or anyone else contacts you again, call me immediately. After hanging up, Matthew stood in the cool evening air, his mind racing. Fletcher's plan was sophisticated, but it had a fatal flaw. It relied on perfect execution. And nothing was perfect. He went back inside to find Rachel curled up on the couch, absorbed in the movie. She looked so much like Meredith that his heart ached. But grief was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just work stuff." That night, as Rachel slept, Matthew began constructing his counterplan. Fletcher thought he could psychologically torture him into submission. He was wrong. Matthew McElroy had spent 20 years hunting predators. Now he was going to hunt the hunters. Chapter 4. The Pattern. Monday morning, Matthew kissed Rachel goodbye and drove to his office. But instead of going inside, he continued north toward Salem. The coffee shop on the receipt was called The Daily Grind, a small independent place near Willamette University. The barista, a young man with purple hair, barely looked up when Matthew showed him Rachel's photo. "Sorry, man. I see like 300 faces a day. This would have been 2 weeks ago, Wednesday afternoon." "That's really specific." "Why?" Matthew made a quick decision. "She's my wife. She died last week. I'm trying to understand her last days." The barista's expression softened. "Shit, I'm sorry. Let me check our system." He typed on the register. "If she used a card, it'll be in here." "Okay, yeah. Transaction at 2:47 p.m., 2 weeks ago Wednesday. Caramel macchiato and a blueberry scone." Meredith hated caramel. She was allergic to blueberries. Was she alone? According to the ticket, she ordered 2 drinks. Both macchiatos. "Do you have security footage?" "We keep it for 30 days, but I can't just hand that over without." Matthew slid $200 across the counter. "I'm not asking you to hand it over. I'm asking you to let me watch it. 5 minutes." The barista looked around the empty shop, then pocketed the money. "Back office. 5 minutes." The footage showed Rachel clearly. Same hair, same build, wearing Meredith's clothes. But her companion made Matthew's blood run cold. Patricia Frazier, the supposed grieving sister, coaching her over coffee. They sat for 40 minutes, Patricia gesturing, Rachel taking notes on her phone. Matthew photographed the screen from multiple angles, capturing timestamps and faces. Outside, he called Glenn Henderson. "I've got evidence of premeditation. Video of Rachel Fletcher Kirby meeting with Patricia Frazier 2 weeks before Meredith's death." "That's good, but it's not enough. Any lawyer will argue they were just meeting. You need something concrete tying them to Meredith's murder." "I'm working on it." "What about Fernando Thompson?" "Still digging." "But Matt, you need to be careful. If Fletcher realizes you're investigating, he might accelerate whatever endgame he's planning." Matthew drove back to Portland, his mind working through scenarios. Fletcher's plan required time, the slow psychological destruction, the gradual transfer of assets. That meant Rachel needed to maintain her cover, which meant she couldn't make major mistakes. But everyone slipped eventually. He arrived home to find Rachel in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "How was your day?" she asked. "Long. I'm thinking of taking a few days off. Maybe we could take a trip? Get away from everything." She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but Matthew caught it. "Where are you thinking?" "Santorini. Like our honeymoon." Her eyes flickered. "That sounds amazing, but I've got parent-teacher conferences next week. Maybe next month." Meredith's actual conference schedule was online, accessible through the school portal. Matthew had checked that morning. There were no conferences scheduled. "Right, I forgot." "No problem." That evening, Matthew waited until Rachel was asleep, then went to the garage. Hidden behind his tool bench was a portable safe containing items from his FBI days, a backup weapon, surveillance equipment, and a burner phone. He powered it on and called a number he hadn't used in years. "McElroy," a gravelly voice answered. "Thought you went straight." "I need a favor, Clyde." Clyde Blankenship was a private investigator who operated in the gray spaces between legal and not. He owed Matthew 3 favors from a case that had gone sideways 5 years ago. "Name it." "I need surveillance on a woman. Discreet, professional. She can't know she's being watched." This related to that identity theft thing you're supposedly having a breakdown over? Matthew's jaw clenched. How did you hear about that? Word travels. FBI agent claims his dead wife is an imposter. It's good gossip, so they're already planting the narrative. Looks like it. Send me the details. This'll make us even. Matthew spent the next hour compiling everything he knew about Rachel's movements, patterns, and likely contacts. He sent it all to Clyde via encrypted email. Then he did something risky. He texted Fletcher's burner number. I know about Patricia and Fernando. I know about the coffee shop meetings. You're not as clever as you think. The response came 3 minutes later. But I'm clever enough. Sleep well, Matthew. Next to my daughter. Chapter 5. The Trap Within a Trap. Tuesday morning, Rachel suggested they visit Meredith's mother's grave as planned. Matthew agreed, curious to see how she would handle it. At Riverview Cemetery, Rachel led him directly to the correct plot. She knelt, placing flowers, her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be genuine grief. I miss her so much, she whispered. I know we had our differences, but she was still my mom. Matthew watched, impressed despite himself. If he hadn't known better, he would have believed every tear. They stood in silence for several minutes. Then Rachel said something that made Matthew's blood freeze. Remember when we scattered her ashes at the coast? How the wind almost blew them back in our faces, and we couldn't stop laughing even though we felt terrible. It was a perfect memory. Touching, personal, exactly the kind of thing Meredith would have shared with him. Except they hadn't scattered any ashes. Dorothy O'Neill was buried in the plot they were standing at. Matthew kept his expression neutral. Yeah, that was something. Rachel had just made her first real mistake. In the car, Matthew called Glenn on speaker, as if catching up with an old friend. Hey man, remember Meredith's mom's funeral? That was 6 years ago? 7. Glenn corrected, playing along. Traditional service, traditional burial. Meredith was adamant about that. Rachel shifted in her seat, nearly imperceptible. That afternoon, while Rachel was allegedly at school, Matthew received a call from Clyde. Your girl met with someone interesting this morning. Guy named Roger Fletcher, fresh out on parole. They met at a park, talked for 20 minutes. Looked like a coaching session. Did you get photos? Video. Want me to keep following? Absolutely. And Clyde? Be extremely careful. These people are dangerous. Matthew sat in his office, watching the surveillance video. Rachel and Roger, heads close together, speaking intently. Fletcher's body language was controlling, paternal. Rachel's was submissive, seeking approval. This wasn't just a revenge scheme. It was a father manipulating a damaged daughter into criminal conspiracy. An idea began forming. A dangerous idea, but potentially effective. What if Matthew didn't just defend against Fletcher's plan? What if he turned it against them? He called a lawyer he trusted, Andrew Dolan, who specialized in criminal defense. Andrew, hypothetically, if someone were to impersonate someone else, what would be the charges? Identity theft, fraud, potentially conspiracy to commit murder if the original person died under suspicious circumstances. What? And if the impersonator were caught in the act, documented extensively, what would be the sentence? Federal charges, 15 to 25 years. More if murder's involved. Matt, what's going on? How do you feel about cases that make national headlines? Matthew laid out the situation, carefully editing to protect his investigation. Andrew listened without interrupting. Jesus Christ, Andrew said finally. This is insane. But if you can prove it, this is the kind of case that makes careers. What do you need from me? I need everything documented legally. Every conversation recorded with proper consent. Every piece of evidence chain of custody clean. Because when this goes to trial, I want it airtight. You're planning something. I'm planning justice. But I need to do it right. That evening, Rachel came home tired, complaining about difficult students. Matthew ordered takeout, and they ate while watching TV, the picture of a normal couple. But Matthew was studying her, cataloging every detail. The way she held her fork, slightly different from Meredith. The way she laughed at jokes, almost right, but the timing was off by a fraction. Small things, individually meaningless. Collectively damning. His phone buzzed. A text from Fletcher. You're playing a dangerous game, Matthew. One you can't win. Matthew replied. You taught Rachel to be someone else. But did you teach her how to handle pressure? How to maintain a lie when everything's falling apart? Because I'm going to systematically destroy her cover, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. No response. Good. Let Fletcher worry. Wednesday morning, Matthew suggested a dinner party for Friday night. I've been thinking about what you said about reconnecting with people. Let's invite some of your colleagues from school. Rachel looked uncomfortable. I don't think. Come on, it'll be fun. I'll handle all the planning. You just show up and be yourself. The word yourself hung in the air. Okay, she said finally, if you really want to. Matthew spent Wednesday and Thursday carefully planning. He contacted 4 teachers from Lincoln High School, real colleagues of Meredith's, and invited them to a memorial dinner. He told them the truth. His wife had died, and he wanted to honor her memory with people who knew her best. They all agreed to come. He didn't tell Rachel the dinner was a memorial. Let her think it was a normal social gathering. Friday afternoon, Matthew set up recording equipment throughout the house, audio and video, all legally documented with proper signage at the entrance. He was betting Rachel wouldn't notice the small notices or would think them part of his security business. The guests arrived at 7. Matthew watched Rachel's face as she recognized them. Teachers who knew Meredith intimately, who would immediately spot inconsistencies. Heather, Rachel said, embracing a woman who looked confused. I'm sorry. Do we know each other? The woman asked. I'm Jackie Cabrera. I teach history. Rachel's smile faltered. Of course I'm sorry. Pregnancy brain. Meredith wasn't pregnant. Matthew saw Jackie's eyebrows raise. Throughout dinner, Matthew asked innocent questions designed to trap Rachel. Hey, honey, tell everyone about that student who wrote the amazing essay on Gatsby. What was his name? David. Rachel guessed. Actually, one of the teachers said, I think you're thinking of the girl, Sophia. She won that scholarship based on that essay. Right, Sophia. I'm so scattered lately. Matthew watched Rachel unravel slowly over 2 hours. Small mistakes, minor inconsistencies, nothing obvious to the casual observer. But he was recording everything, building a case. By dessert, Rachel's hands were shaking. She excused herself to the bathroom. Matthew, Jackie said quietly, is everything okay? She seems different. Different how? I don't know. It's probably nothing. But it wasn't nothing, and they both knew it. After the guests left, Rachel confronted him. What the hell was that? What do you mean? You set me up. Those questions, those people. You're testing me. Why would I test my own wife? She stared at him, and for a moment the mask slipped. Matthew saw Rachel Fletcher Kirby, actress and criminal, struggling to maintain her cover. I'm going to bed, she said finally. Matthew waited until she was asleep, then reviewed the recordings. Perfect. Every hesitation, every wrong answer, every slip documented. He sent copies to Glenn, to Andrew, and to Clyde. Insurance. In case Fletcher tried to destroy the evidence. Then he texted Fletcher, your daughter failed tonight. Spectacularly. And I have it all on video. Want to talk surrender terms? The response was immediate. You're bluffing. You have nothing that would hold up in court. Matthew replied, try me. I'm 2 steps ahead of you, Roger. I always have been. His phone rang. Fletcher, calling from yet another burner. You think you're clever, Fletcher snarled. But you're forgetting one thing. I don't care about Rachel. She's a tool. If she burns, I'll walk away clean. Can you live with that? Sending that damaged girl to prison while I remain free? I'll find a way to get you both. You can't. I've covered every track. But here's what I can do. I can make sure that when this falls apart, you're the one who looks crazy. The FBI agent who murdered his wife in a jealous rage, then constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory to cover it up. Patricia will testify she saw you arguing with Meredith. Fernando will provide forensic evidence you tampered with. The narrative is ready, Matthew. All I have to do is activate it. The line went dead. Matthew sat in the dark, thinking. Fletcher was right about one thing. If this went to trial as is, the case was complicated. But he had one advantage Fletcher didn't know about. He was willing to go further than anyone expected. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. Saturday morning, Matthew woke to find Rachel already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed. We need to talk, she said. About what? About what you're doing. about what you think is happening." Her voice was different, harder, less like Meredith. "I know you've been investigating. I know about the recordings from last night." Matthew sat up slowly. "Ow, because I'm good at what I do. I saw the cameras. I saw the legal notices. You think you're so smart, but you telegraphed every move." She stood, pacing. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop this investigation. You're going to accept reality. Or I walk away right now, and you'll never prove anything. You can't leave. You're in too deep." "Am I?" "Roger has contingencies. We always do. I can disappear, become someone else. I've done it before." She looked at him, and her expression was almost pitying. "You could have just accepted this, Matthew. You could have had a life with me. I studied Meredith for months. I can be her better than she was." "You really believe that?" "I know it. She was weak, Matthew. Depressed, anxious, always second-guessing herself. I'm stronger, better. You just can't see it because you're stuck in the past." Matthew stood, closing the distance between them. "You want to know what I see? I see a woman so broken that she doesn't know who she is anymore. Your father destroyed you, Rachel, made you into his tool. And now you're so deep in this lie that you can't find your way out." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Vulnerability, maybe, doubt. Then it hardened. "You're wrong." "Am I?" "Then prove it. Walk out that door right now. Disappear. But we both know you can't, because Roger won't let you. This was never about you getting a new life. It was about him using you to destroy me." Rachel's hand moved to her purse. Matthew saw the shape of a gun. "Don't," he said calmly. "You shoot me, and Roger's whole plan falls apart. The investigation focuses on you. The recordings prove premeditation. You go away for life. Maybe I don't care anymore." "Yes, you do. Because despite everything, you still want your father's approval. You're still that girl trying to please him, trying to be good enough." Matthew's voice softened. "He's using you, Rachel. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about hurting me." She laughed bitterly. "You think you can play therapist? Turn me against him? I think you're smarter than you're pretending to be. You know this ends badly for you." Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. "I have to go." "Where?" "None of your business." She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Matthew followed her to the driveway. "If you leave now, you're making a choice. There's no coming back from it." She got in the car. Through the window, she said, "Maybe there was never anything to come back to." She drove away. Matthew immediately called Clyde. "She's moving. Silver Honda Civic, license plate." He rattled off the number. "Follow her. Don't lose her." On it. Matthew went back inside and called Glenn. "Things are accelerating. Rachel just confronted me. She's running scared. You pushed her too hard, Matt. I pushed her exactly as hard as I needed to. She's going to make a mistake now. She's emotional, desperate. That's when people slip, or when they become dangerous." Matthew checked his gun, a Glock 19 he'd kept from his FBI days. He hoped he wouldn't need it, but hope wasn't a strategy. An hour later, Clyde called back. "You're not going to believe where she went." "Tell me." "The Oregon State Penitentiary. Visitor entrance. She's talking to someone." "Can you find out who?" "Working on it." "But Matt, there's someone else here. Guy matching Roger Fletcher's description, sitting in a car across the street. He's watching her." Matthew's mind raced. He's making sure she doesn't flip. Making sure she stays loyal. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet. Just watch and document everything." Matthew spent the next 3 hours reviewing every piece of evidence he compiled. The video from the coffee shop, the dinner party recordings, the security footage from around his house showing Rachel's subtle differences from Meredith, the phone records Glenn had obtained showing contact between Rachel and Patricia. It was circumstantial, but building. He needed something definitive. His phone rang. Unknown number. Matthew McElroy. A male voice, nervous. "Who is this?" "My name is Fernando Thompson. We need to meet. Right now." Matthew's pulse quickened. "Why would I meet with you?" "Because I'm done. I'm done being part of this. Done lying for Roger Fletcher. I want to make a deal, and I want to make it before this gets worse." "Where?" "Waterfront Park, North End, in 1 hour. Come alone. If I see anyone else, I walk." "How do I know this isn't a trap?" "You don't. But I'm your only chance at getting the forensic evidence you need. Real evidence, not just circumstantial." The line went dead. Matthew called Glenn. Fernando Thompson just called. Says he wants to deal. It's a trap, Matt. Probably. But I'm going anyway. Then I'm coming with backup. No, he said alone. If he bolts, we lose our best witness. Matthew, I've been doing this a long time, Glenn. I know how to handle myself. An hour later, Matthew sat on a bench in Waterfront Park, watching the Willamette River flow past. Fernando Thompson appeared from the trees, looking haggard and frightened. Thank you for coming, he said, sitting down but keeping distance. Talk. I falsified the autopsy identification. Roger Fletcher paid me $50,000 to make sure the body in Seattle was positively identified as Meredith McElroy. He pulled out a flash drive. This has the real forensic report. The Jane Doe wasn't your wife. Different blood type, different dental structure. I doctored everything. Matthew's hand moved toward the drive, but Fernando pulled back. First, I want immunity. Full immunity from prosecution. I can't promise that. Then we have nothing to discuss. Fernando stood. Wait. Matthew thought quickly. I can get you a meeting with the FBI. They can offer deals. No, I deal with you. Or I walk away and destroy this evidence. You have 5 seconds to decide. Matthew made a decision that would haunt him later. Fine. You help me nail Fletcher and his daughter, and I'll personally ensure you walk. It was a lie, and they both probably knew it. But Fernando needed to believe it. He handed over the flash drive. The real autopsy is on there. But there's more. Roger Fletcher kept insurance on all of us, recorded conversations, financial records, everything. He has it stored in a safe deposit box at Pacific Northwest Bank, box 447. The key is hidden in his apartment. How do I access it? You don't. But the FBI came with a warrant. And I can testify to what's in it. Why are you doing this? Why betray Fletcher now? Fernando's face contorted. Because my sister Patricia is in too deep. She thinks she's going to walk away from this rich. But I know Roger. He's planning to throw all of us away when he's done. He used my sister. He used Rachel. He used me. I won't let him destroy my family. Where's Patricia now? Safe house in Seattle. She doesn't know I'm here. Matthew studied Fernando's face, looking for deception. He found only fear and desperation. Okay, here's what happens next. You're going to meet with FBI Special Agent Glenn Henderson. You're going to tell him everything. And you're going to testify against Fletcher when this goes to trial. And my immunity? I'll do everything I can. Fernando nodded shakily. There's one more thing. Roger is planning something big. Soon. He told Patricia it's the final act. I don't know what it means, but it scared her. Matthew's phone buzzed. A text from Clyde. Rachel left the prison. Heading your direction. Fast. You need to leave now, Matthew told Fernando. Meet me at the FBI field office in 2 hours. Fernando disappeared into the trees. Matthew opened the flash drive on his phone and found hundreds of files, autopsy reports, bank statements, recorded conversations. Everything they needed. Then he saw Rachel's car pull into the parking lot, moving too fast. She got out, and she was holding a gun. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Put the phone down, Matthew. Rachel walked toward him, the gun steady in her hands. She'd been crying, mascara streaked across her cheeks, but her eyes were cold with purpose. Rachel, don't do this. You couldn't just let it go, could you? You had to keep digging, keep pushing. She was 20 feet away now, close enough that missing would be impossible. Roger was right. You're too dangerous to leave alive. Matthew stood slowly, hands visible. So, this is the final act Fernando mentioned? Kill me, stage it as a suicide, and disappear? Something like that. She laughed, a broken sound. You were right earlier. I am my father's tool. I always have been. And, you know what the funny part is? I actually started to like being Meredith. Started to like being someone normal. Someone who had a life that made sense. Then put the gun down. Testify against Roger. You don't have to be his puppet anymore. You really think it's that simple? I could just walk away. Rachel's hand trembled. I killed her, Matthew. Your real wife. I was there when Patricia gave her the pills, when we watched her slip away. I held her hand as she died and told her it would all be okay. I'm a murderer. Matthew felt rage and grief war inside him, but he forced his voice to stay calm. Ow! Patricia befriended her 6 months ago, became her therapist, her confidant, convinced her she was depressed, prescribed medication. Except the medication was slowly poisoning her, making her genuinely suicidal. By the end, she wanted to die. She begged us to help her. Rachel's voice broke. So we did. Jesus Christ. We took her to Seattle, to that hotel room. Made it look perfect. I watched her take those pills, watch her drift away, and all I could think was, finally, I get to become someone real. Someone loved. Matthew saw genuine anguish in her eyes, and despite everything, felt a flicker of pity. Rachel, you're a victim too. Fletcher destroyed you. No, she screamed it, the gun wavering. Don't you dare pity me. I made my choices. I'm good at this. I became Meredith better than she ever was. You made mistakes. The ashes, the conference schedule, the dinner party. Because you wouldn't stop testing me. Because you made me paranoid. She steadied the gun. But none of that matters now. You die here, and I disappear. Roger has it all planned. Fernando's testimony won't hold up. We have insurance on him too. And Patricia will never talk. You're wrong about Fernando. He already gave me everything. Rachel's eyes flickered to Matthew's pocket, where his phone was recording. You're lying. Am I? Check your own phone. Roger's been monitoring all of us. He knew Fernando was wavering. That's why you're really here, to clean up loose ends before Fernando could talk. Doubt crossed her face. She pulled out her phone with her left hand, keeping the gun trained on Matthew with her right. What she didn't see was Clyde Blankenship emerging from the trees behind her with a taser. Drop it, Clyde shouted. Rachel spun, firing instinctively. The shot went wide. Clyde fired the taser, but Rachel twisted, avoiding the probes. She ran toward her car, and Matthew sprinted after her. She was fast, but he was faster, tackling her before she reached the vehicle. The gun skittered across the pavement. They struggled. Rachel fought with desperate strength, catching Matthew with an elbow to the ribs. He rolled, putting her in a control hold he'd learned in FBI training. It's over, he said. Sirens approached. Glenn had been listening after all, probably through Matthew's phone. Squad cars flooded the parking lot. Rachel stopped struggling. She started laughing, a terrible sound. You think this is over? Roger planned for this. He always plans for everything. You won, Matthew, but it cost you everything. Your wife is dead. Your life is destroyed. Was it worth it? Matthew looked down at her. This woman who wore his wife's face, who'd studied every detail of the woman he loved just to destroy him, and felt nothing but emptiness. Yes, he said, it was worth it. Chapter 8. The Evidence. The FBI interrogation room was cold and sterile. Matthew sat across from Rachel Fletcher Kirby, now in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. Glenn stood in the corner, watching. Andrew Dolan had advised against this meeting, but Matthew needed closure. You got your deal, Matthew said. Full testimony against Roger Fletcher in exchange for a reduced sentence. 15 years instead of life. Rachel looked older without makeup, without the mask. More like herself, whoever that was. 15 years is still a long time. It's better than you deserve. Maybe. She met his eyes. I know you won't believe this, but I'm sorry. About Meredith. About all of it. Don't insult her memory by pretending you cared. But I did in a way. The more I studied her, the more I understood why you loved her. She was kind, patient, everything I'm not. Rachel's voice dropped. Sometimes I think about what my life might have been if I'd met you first. If I'd been someone you could actually love instead of someone pretending to be her. Stop. It's true, though. This whole thing, it wasn't just about Roger's revenge. Part of me wanted to know what it felt like to be loved like that. To be someone worth loving. Matthew stood. Tell me everything you know about Roger's plans. Every detail. Over the next hour, Rachel laid it all out. How Roger had orchestrated everything from prison using burner phones and coded messages during visits. How Patricia had systematically befriended Meredith, earning her trust over months. How Fernando had been coerced into helping through threats against his family. But the most damning revelation was this. Roger Fletcher had intended to kill Matthew eventually. The psychological torture was just the beginning. Once Matthew was sufficiently isolated and desperate, Roger planned to have Rachel murder him and stage it as a murder-suicide. Matthew killing his wife before taking his own life, the tragic end of a man driven mad by paranoia. He wanted you to suffer first, Rachel said, to experience the same isolation and helplessness he felt in prison. Your death was always part of the plan. I was just supposed to keep you alive long enough to break you completely. When were you supposed to kill me? Next week, on your anniversary. Roger thought that would be poetic. Glenn stepped forward. We need to move on Fletcher now. If he realizes Rachel's been arrested, he'll run. He won't run, Rachel said. He's too arrogant. He'll think he can talk his way out of this. But there's something you need to know. Roger has a final contingency. If everything falls apart, he has one last play. What is it? I don't know exactly. He never told me details. But he said if he goes down, he's taking others with him. Important people. People with power. Matthew and Glenn exchanged looks. He has blackmail material? He spent 7 years in prison with white-collar criminals, corrupt politicians, dirty cops. He collected insurance on all of them. If you move on him, he'll release everything. Let him, Matthew said. I don't care who goes down with him, as long as he goes down. After leaving the interrogation room, Glenn pulled Matthew aside. The flash drive Fernando gave you is gold. We've got Roger on conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, identity theft, and about 20 other charges. But we need to move carefully. If he really does have political connections. I said I don't care. Matt, think about this. If Fletcher starts naming names, this becomes bigger than just your case. It could blow up into a massive corruption scandal. The Bureau will want to handle it delicately. There's nothing delicate about what he did to Meredith. Nothing delicate about what he put me through. Matthew's voice was steel. You can play politics if you want. I'm going to end him. What are you planning? Justice. That night, Matthew sat in his empty house, surrounded by photographs of Meredith. The real Meredith, not the imposter who'd worn her face. He picked up a photo from their honeymoon, the exact moment referenced in the text Rachel had sent him. Meredith laughing, her hair caught in the wind, happiness radiating from her eyes. She deserved better than this. Better than being murdered by strangers. Better than having her identity stolen. Better than having her husband spend weeks living with her killer. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Matthew. Roger Fletcher, still playing his games. I hear you've been busy. It's over, Fletcher. Rachel's talking. Fernando's talking. We have everything. Do you? That's interesting. Because I just received word that my daughter was arrested, and I wanted to make you an offer. I'm not interested in deals. You should be, because in about 30 seconds, I'm going to send an email to 50 different news organizations and government agencies. That email contains evidence of corruption involving 2 senators, 4 congressmen, 3 federal judges, and a dozen law enforcement officials. Careers will end. Families will be destroyed. The entire Pacific Northwest political establishment will implode. So what? They're corrupt. Let them burn. But here's the catch. Mixed in with the real evidence is manufactured evidence implicating you. Photoshop documents showing you took bribes during your FBI days. Fake recordings of you discussing illegal activities. Your reputation will be destroyed alongside theirs. Matthew's hand tightened on the phone. You're bluffing. Am I? I had 7 years to prepare this, Matthew. 7 years to make sure that if I went down, I took everyone with me, including you. So here's my offer. Drop the charges against Rachel. Let us disappear, and I'll delete the email. Everyone goes back to their normal lives. Except Meredith. She doesn't get a normal life. She's dead because of you. Casualties happen. Think carefully about your next move. The line went dead. Matthew sat in silence, thinking. Fletcher was forcing him to choose justice for Meredith or protecting innocent people from scandal. It was the kind of impossible choice that broke lesser men. But Matthew McElroy wasn't a lesser man. He called Andrew Dolan. I need you to do something for me. Something that might be illegal. I'm listening. I need you to find someone who can trace an email before it's sent. Someone very good at computer forensics. Matt, if you're planning what I think you're planning, can you do it or not? A pause. I know someone. Former NSA. He owes me. Get him. I need to find Roger Fletcher's computer or phone before he sends that email. Matthew made 3 more calls. The first to Glenn, giving him Fletcher's location based on call triangulation. The second to Clyde, hiring him for one final surveillance job. The third to Fernando, asking for any information about Roger's digital habits. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed, not for himself, but for the strength to finish this without becoming the monster Fletcher wanted him to be. Chapter 9. The Fall. The raid on Roger Fletcher's apartment happened at dawn. FBI agents, Matthew, and Glenn stood outside the modest complex where Fletcher had been living since his release. The warrant was solid, based on Fernando's testimony and the evidence from the flash drive. Remember, Glenn said to Matthew, "You're here as a civilian consultant. Don't do anything stupid." Define stupid. Anything that jeopardizes the case. They breached the door. The apartment was empty, but Fletcher had clearly left in a hurry. Clothes scattered, drawers hanging open. On the kitchen table, they found a laptop, still warm. Andrew's computer forensics expert, a nervous man named Paul Melton, immediately got to work. "He's got a delayed send set up," Paul said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Email scheduled to deploy in." He checked his watch. 47 minutes. "Can you stop it?" "I can try. But the encryption is sophisticated. Military grade. This'll take time." Matthew's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Looking for me? I'm already gone. But don't worry. We'll see each other again. At my daughter's trial. When I testify about how unstable you became after your wife's death. How you harassed an innocent woman, manufactured evidence, destroyed lives. Who do you think the jury will believe? A decorated prisoner who served his time, or a bitter ex-FBI agent who can't let go?" Matthew showed the text to Glenn. "He's trying to get ahead of this. Build his defense before we can build our case. We have Rachel's testimony. A daughter testifying against her father? Any lawyer will argue coercion. We need the hard evidence on that laptop." Paul worked feverishly, sweat beading his forehead. "The encryption is changing. He's got remote access, trying to trigger the send early. Can you lock him out?" "Working on it. Got it." Paul's fingers stopped. Email stopped. "But there's something else here." "A lot of something." He turned the laptop screen. Thousands of files, recordings, photographs, documents. Everything Roger Fletcher had collected over 7 years. "Jesus," Glenn breathed. He wasn't bluffing. Half the Pacific Northwest power structure is in here. Matthew scanned through the files, feeling sick. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. A video file dated 3 months ago, labeled insurance_final.mp4. He clicked it. The video showed Meredith, alive but clearly drugged, sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room. Patricia Frazier sat beside her, holding her hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Patricia said in a soothing voice. "The pain will stop soon. Just take these pills. It'll all be over." "I'm so tired," Meredith slurred. "So tired of pretending I'm okay." "I know. That's why this is the kindest thing. No more pain. No more pretending." Meredith took the pills, one by one, while Patricia stroked her hair. The camera never moved, suggesting it was mounted on a tripod. This wasn't just murder. It was a recorded execution. In the background, barely visible in a mirror, was Roger Fletcher, watching with clinical interest. Matthew's hands shook. He'd seen a lot of horror in his FBI career, but nothing had prepared him for watching his wife's final moments, for seeing the calculated cruelty of her murder. "Matt," Glenn said gently, "you shouldn't watch this. I need to see it. All of it." The video ran for 43 minutes. By the end, Meredith was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Patricia checked her pulse, nodded to the camera, and left the room. The recording continued for another hour, documenting Meredith's death with terrible precision. Then the video cut to a new scene. Roger Fletcher, sitting in what looked like this apartment, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, Matthew, it means my contingency plan failed. It means you won. Congratulations. You always were tenacious. But here's what you need to understand. I'm not sorry. Not for Meredith, not for any of it. You took 7 years of my life. I took the person you loved most. We're even now." He leaned closer to the camera. "But it doesn't end here. Even if I go to prison, even if I die there, This case will haunt you. Every time you close your eyes, you'll see her face. You'll wonder if you could have saved her, if you'd been smarter or faster. The guilt will eat you alive. I've studied you, Matthew. I know how your mind works. This victory will destroy you more surely than any defeat. Fletcher smiled. See you in court. The video ended. Matthew stood in silence for a long moment. Then, with deliberate control, he said, Paul, make 100 copies of everything on this laptop. Send them to the FBI, the DOJ, every news organization you can think of. Roger Fletcher wanted to burn down the establishment. Let's give him what he wants. Matt, think about this, Glenn protested. The blowback. I don't care. Everyone on this laptop earned their exposure. Fletcher thought he could blackmail us into letting him go. He's wrong. What about the manufactured evidence against you? We'll deal with it. I've got nothing to hide. Matthew looked at the frozen image of Fletcher on the screen. But he does. And I'm going to make sure the entire world sees it. Over the next 6 hours, the story exploded. News of the corruption scandal broke like a tsunami, engulfing politicians and officials across 3 states. But the headline that dominated every outlet was different. FBI agent solves own wife's murder, exposes massive identity theft ring. Roger Fletcher was arrested at a bus station in California, trying to flee to Mexico. His arrest was filmed by a dozen news cameras. When FBI agents cuffed him, one reporter shouted, Mr. Fletcher, what do you say to Matthew McElroy? Fletcher looked directly into the camera and smiled. I say, was she worth it? The trial lasted 6 weeks. Rachel Fletcher Kirby testified against her father, describing in detail how he'd manipulated her since childhood, grooming her to become his accomplice. Patricia Frazier took a plea deal, confirming everything. Fernando Thompson provided forensic evidence of the falsified autopsy. But it was the video that sealed Roger Fletcher's fate. The jury watched Meredith's murder, watched Fletcher's confession, and deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge gave Fletcher natural life without possibility of parole. But before the bailiffs took him away, Fletcher requested to make a statement. I'd like to address Mr. McElroy directly, he said. The judge allowed it. Matthew stood from the gallery. You won, Fletcher said. I acknowledge that. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. But I want you to know something. I'm not sorry. Even now, facing life in prison, I'm not sorry. Because I know that video will play in your mind forever. I know you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved her. That's my real revenge, Matthew. Not your death, but your guilt. Matthew walked to the defense table, looked Fletcher in the eye, and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. You're wrong. I'm not carrying guilt. I'm carrying her memory. Meredith was kind, intelligent, and good. Everything you'll never be. You took her life, but you couldn't touch what we had. You couldn't diminish the 8 years of happiness we shared. And while you rot in a cell, I'll be living the life she would have wanted for me. I'll be honoring her memory by being better than you could ever imagine. Matthew turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. I made sure every prisoner in your new facility knows exactly what you did. Knows you murdered an innocent woman to settle a grudge. You think you're smart, Roger? Let's see how smart you are when you're surrounded by people who hate you as much as I do. You wanted me to suffer for 7 years? You're going to suffer for the rest of your life. Fletcher's smug expression finally cracked. 6 months later, Matthew stood at Meredith's grave, her real grave, where her body finally rested after being released from the coroner's office. He placed fresh flowers and stood in silence, letting the Portland rain wash over him. I got them, he said quietly. All of them. Roger's in prison. Rachel's in prison. Patricia and Fernando cooperated, but they're still serving time. It's done. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Matthew imagined it was Meredith's way of responding. I know you tell me to let go of the anger, to forgive and move on. But I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He touched the headstone. But I promise you this. I won't let what they did define the rest of my life. I won't become the broken man Fletcher wanted me to be. His phone buzzed. Glenn Henderson, asking if he wanted to grab dinner. Matthew smiled. Life was slowly returning to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything. He had started doing consulting work for the FBI again, helping with complex cases. He'd sold the house where he'd lived with the imposter, bought something smaller but filled with genuine memories of Meredith. He was seeing a therapist, working through the trauma. And slowly, day by day, he was healing. "I'll visit again next week," Matthew said to the grave. "I love you, Meredith. Always." He walked back to his car, leaving the cemetery behind. The rain was letting up, sunlight breaking through the clouds. It felt like permission to move forward. Epilogue. 3 years later. Matthew sat in his office, reviewing a case file, when his assistant knocked. "Mr. McElroy? There's someone here to see you. Says it's important." "Who?" She wouldn't give her name, but she said to tell you. Someone who knows what it's like to survive Roger Fletcher. Curious, Matthew walked to the reception area. A woman in her 30s stood there, professional attire, confident posture. She looked vaguely familiar. "Can I help you?" "My name is Natalie Costa. 7 years ago, I was supposed to be one of Roger Fletcher's victims. He targeted me, studied me, planned to replace me. But he got arrested before he could finish. Your investigation saved my life." Matthew felt something shift inside him. "I'm glad you're safe. I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to show you something." She handed him a folder. Inside were photographs of her life, marriage, children, career achievements. "This is the life I got to live because of you. Because you stopped him." Matthew looked through the photographs, feeling emotion well up. "Thank you for showing me this. Mr. McElroy, I know you paid a terrible price to stop Fletcher. I know what he took from you. But I wanted you to understand, your pain saved lives. Plural. I'm not the only one he was targeting. There were at least 4 other people on his list. We all got to live because you wouldn't give up." After Natalie left, Matthew sat alone in his office, thinking about Fletcher's final words. The man had been wrong about so many things, but especially about guilt destroying Matthew. Yes, Matthew carried the weight of Meredith's death. Yes, he wished he'd seen the conspiracy earlier, protected her better. But he also carried something else, the knowledge that he'd fought for justice and won, that he'd stopped a monster from destroying more lives. Roger Fletcher was rotting in prison, tormented by inmates who knew exactly what he was. Rachel Fletcher Kirby was serving her sentence, finally receiving